Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. Fellas.
Hello.
What are we doing?
We're on route. There we are. Hey.
You handsome buggers. How freaking cold is it in your house? Jesus, man.
Well, the heating just went on, Pete.
It's February. Switch it off. Switch it off. I literally just rocked in, put the kids back in their cage. Now I'm going to kick some ass, take some names. Shall we go for it?
Yeah.
Let's see where we go. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gore-Tex Professional Fabrics. Now, we all know the working environment of a firefighter is filled with challenges. We face serious risks on the job, such as heat exhaustion, burns, physical and mental stress, and we frequently come into contact with high levels of toxic chemicals. Now, I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together. Steve, John, first and foremost, welcome back. Welcome to the podcast. Well, it's first time on the podcast, but welcome back.
Thanks very much for having us.
I desperately wanted to have you both on. I mean, I've wanted to have you both on for a little while. I know we've spoken in our little ISAR adventures here, there, and everywhere. But then when the call came in this year for potentially one of the biggest disasters we've seen in a very long time. So for the listeners' benefit, this one was 6th of February, 2023. It was a Turkey, Syria earthquake. So 4:17 is what I have local time. There was an earthquake struck southern and central Turkey, northern western Syria. The epicenter was 32 kilometers, so 20 miles northwest of Gaziantep. Am I saying that right?
Yep.
So it was followed by a 7.7 earthquake later that day as well. So the aftershock itself was 7.7. So both pretty intense stuff. And it was centered 59 miles to the northwest from the first province. So for people that are unfamiliar, we kind of get some of these deployments. And this is something that's actually accessible to everybody. GDAX, I know you both use that as well, right?
Yep.
So people can Google this. This is the Global Disaster Alert and Coordination System. It's basically a cooperation framework between the US, European Commission, and disaster managers worldwide to improve the alerts, the information exchange, and coordination. So anybody can just go and Google this. It tells you a little bit about all of the stuff that's going on, because some people think that it's all a big secret or something like that. It's not the case at all. And you can see floods, earthquakes, volcanoes, droughts. For example, there's forest fires in Nigeria. There's droughts in Dominican Republic. There was an earthquake in Solomon today as well. So take us back for the two of you. When those kind of bits of news come in, how does it tend to come in through us, through the services, to everybody that needs to sort of get that quick response on the road?
To be fair for this one, Pete, it was about 6:30 in the morning news. Just listening to BBC News, came across there'd been a large earthquake, and as soon as they said Turkey, my ears pricked up, because, as you know, we've been waiting for something in Turkey for a long time. Its position in the globe, where it is, it's been under a lot of tension for many years, and
it's a ticking time bomb, isn't it?
Ticking time bomb. As soon as I heard Turkey, my ears pricked up, got that feeling in my stomach, and I got on the phone, to Steve, and I texted Andy Buchan, our team leader. I just said, look, something big's happening in Turkey. Are you aware? And I think, Steve, you'd been in the GDAX already.
Yeah, so I'd had the alerts to my phone when I got up that morning. So I was maybe about half an hour, 45 minutes ahead of John, because I was actually travelling north to Aberdeen that day anyway, to go on a residential course. So when I seen the alert and had a look at the humanitarian impact, so you'll know yourself, Pete, from looking at GDAX, it's on a traffic light system. And the minute I seen it was at red and pointing towards 3, I thought, yeah, we're definitely looking at something here. So I went in the shower, came out the shower, and thought, right, I better go and put my ISAR kit in the back of the van as well. So luckily enough, I keep my bags packed all the time anyway.
Do you? Because everyone says they do.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I'd had some stuff out of mine because we went and did some navigation stuff the week before, and I was like, damn, it's having that discipline to do that reset. And
I think I've learned over the years that if you keep them packed, it keeps the house tidy as well. So I have my 3 bags, they're all packed, and then I have just the large storage boxes, the click storage boxes in the same cupboard, and the determines on where we're going. If we're going someplace hot, all the hot stuff will go as an addition to the bag. If we're going someplace cold, you'll put the extra cold kit in the bag. So that's all I had to do that morning, was basically tip the cold kit box into the big bag, and I was ready to go.
Because that's the thing. I'll just pause there for a second, because some people think Turkey and they go, oh, it's really hot all the time, because they think of Turkey and go on a holiday there. It's not the case. And some people, I know even on our deployment, bless them, didn't necessarily do that bit of background on what's the weather like currently there, because it was freaking cold, right?
That was the first thing I looked at. After I looked at GDAX, I thought, like, what's the weather like there? Because that's going to determine what box is going in the bag. Then from that on, I headed north towards Aberdeen anyway. So I was heading for the course, and that was when our coordinator gave me the call, and he said that he'd been alerted from the capability team down south to get names to them within 50 minutes. So normally that request, I think you've got about an hour and a half. So I think at that point I thought, this is definitely a goer. John and I had spoke on the phone at that point as well, and my coordinator, the boss, he just said, look, here's the 5 names. Go and get on the phone to them and make sure that their bags are packed and they're ready to go, and just stand by for any other updates.
So for people that don't know, just give us a whistle-stop tour of things that UKISAR members should always have prepped, and/or things like passports, vaccinations. What should they? Because they should always be in a state of readiness, but I don't think people fully appreciate what that means.
Yeah, so you touched on your vaccinations here. We've got about 20 vaccinations that we've got to keep current. They all go out of date at different times. Every year they change the goalposts with it. So we've got a live spreadsheet. And I think the week before had been on to the team members, guys, get your vaccinations up to date. We had literally just come on call a few days. We came on call in February. So when we were off call is the time to get everything squared away. So you get your vaccinations. We've got our passport to make sure it's well in date for deployment.
Minimum 6 months, isn't it? We're supposed to keep them.
Yeah, minimum 6 months. All other kind of relevant paper. So you get your passport. You've also got 6 copies of your passport. You've got photographs that you're meant to have, like passport photographs copied. Everything's got to be squared away. We're quite good in Scotland. We've got a little book, a little folder that we keep everything in. And every training day, we look at this folder and everybody else's folder. So we do the pre-deployment checks on the last Friday of every single month.
Some services are not that diligent. They want to be, but UKISAR, it's voluntary, isn't it? So it's hard to drag people in when they're so committed to everything else at the minute.
I think it comes from our current coordinator. He's quite meticulous in everything he does, and he wants to take the team to a standard where you're kind of setting the benchmark. And things like if you let the little things slide, like your vaccinations and your passport checks, then the other things, the bigger things, they're going to slide as well. So initially it seemed like a bit of an overkill that you're going to do this the last Friday every month, but now it's part and parcel. We turn up, we do our passport checks, and then we actually do a fitness session now as well, which is another point that we could probably touch on that later, and how I feel that the fitness was such a key thing during our time in Turkey.
Just physical resiliency in general. Obviously, we put people through a hell of a lot when they do their selection course. But like so many things like your driving test, some people let that slip, and you can be skilled up to the nines. But if your body has not got that physical resiliency to last in these circumstances where you're sleeping rough, you're not eating when you should be eating, your sleep is just all over the shop. That I'd love to see that coming in much wider as even just a guidance or a recommendation. You mentioned that obviously you've got a great coordinator, but I just wanted to zoom out for a second because we see lots of people retiring at the minute. It sounds like you've got a pretty good succession planning style thing. Because Steve, with the greatest respect to yourself, John, Steve, you're still very young. John, you're not dead yet, but you're closer to retirement. But do you know what I mean? We saw Paul Lawless retired a couple of years back. Was it last year?
2 years ago now.
Jesus, that's gone fast, doesn't it? So yeah, so many of those experienced people. We actually had a couple more. Some of the key people we had in Kosovo have since retired. Yeah. So it's like you've got to lean in heavy now to that succession planning to make sure we keep this standard and this passion, really.
Yeah, our coordinator, I think he's always said that he's not doing this for the here and now. He is doing this for the future. He's been quite open about it, that he's not always going to be there. But some of us, as you quite correctly allude to, are still very, very young. Although I don't look at.
Mate,
I've still got half of my fire service career to go.
It's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And now that you've had that taste of it for the real time deployment, you are looking forward to what the future may hold.
Mate, and you two as well have got a colossal amounts of other disciplines, far more skilled than myself, because we said about kit there, but just again give us a wider context for some of the other skill sets, John, that we see in UKISAR, because other people have additional kit and bags and things over and above the standard stuff.
Yeah, myself and Stevie, we share quite a lot of the disciplines. Actually, I train the trainer on USAR for the service, but we both do sitting gills chainsaw. So chainsaw is another load of kit you need to take with you. We are both medics in the ISAR, so we go and do some extra stuff. We're medic geeks, so we go on all the courses that come our way. The Wilderness Emergency Medical Technician course is one of the big ones that we do.
That's on my list.
It's a beauty. It's run by Wemsey International, and it's a fantastic course. How many hours does Stevie would put in a week? 70?
The first 70 hours when you do the initial course, the shortest day is 16 hours, and it's not like your traditional fire service where you start at 9 o'clock and you've got a tea break at 15:15.
Mate, that's the big thing. When we do our selection and stuff, I always think to people like, everybody in the service, bless them, is conditioned to a 12-hour day when then it's, you get stand downs in it. And it's almost like immediately, as soon as you go about that 12 hours, some people get the fuckums or they get, and that's not everybody, not everybody's bad people, but like we get conditioned to that. And when you're not getting your rest and it's past 12, 14, 15 hours, people those cracks start appearing, don't they?
And and when you come into the ISAR world, that's where you need to be flexible and be able to work for that long durations of periods, and Wemsey is one of the ones that definitely, along with the exercise that we do in ISAR, Wemsey is one of these courses that prepares you for it. It seems sometimes, to be fair, it seems a bit torturous, when you're halfway through the week. We both look at each other the first time we did the course thinking, why on earth did we put ourselves into this? But then you come to the end of it, and it's the same as the ISAR gigs. You come to the end of it and you think, wow, what did we just do? How did we get through that? That was amazing. But unless you do that and put yourself in these positions, if it comes to, like, say, your Turkey deployments, then you're not prepared for it.
Train hard, operate easy.
You got train hard, fight easy. Absolutely, 100%. And we're talking about our fitness. We do the bleep test now as part of our fitness and a monthly fitness.
Is there a suggested mark that we should be achieving?
8.8 is the minimum.
That's high.
Yeah, well, we've pushed it up just a little bit higher than what it takes to maintain your actual SFRS status or the operational status, and that's basically because the coordinator he's quite really identified that you go away on deployment, you go away on training, you're not finishing the end of a 10-hour shift and then going back to your normal bed. You're going to a 10. It may be hot, it may be cold, and it's going to be intense. So he wants that fitness level to just reflect that a little bit. Now, okay, when I joined the service, it was 9.6. So that's something that I'll always run to as soon as you hit 9.6. Some days I'll go beyond, some days I'll just kind of stop and go, nah, that's enough for the day.
Yeah, that's what I walked off at Friday. I walked off at 9.6.
Hey folks, just wanted to jump in with a quick piece around firefighter health and wellbeing. Whether you are trying to join the fire service and pass them tricky fitness tests, if you are currently serving, or if you are coming up to that next chapter of your life, retiring from the emergency services, we get so many different questions around it. So in partnership with Fitness for the Frontline, we have come up with a series of guidance and programs specifically designed to reflect the physical elements of the role of a firefighter. So whether it's carrying an LPP across an overgrown field, lifting a ladder above your head under running it, or wrestling with cutting gear for 30 plus minutes at some kind of complicated RTC, our bodies are required to lift, push, and carry objects in very specific circumstances. That is effectively what Fitness on the Frontline focuses on, as well as the longer term aspects of overall health and wellness for our firefighters. firefighters. Now, we are definitely not about to be smashing out world records or getting that beach body ready in 6 weeks rubbish. The systems and programs that we put in place are adjusted for people's current fitness levels, and they're not a prescriptive weight or a one-size-fits-all BS. It is very likely for myself personally that I'm still going to be a firefighter when I'm 60 plus, so longevity in the role is really important to me, and I know it is for so many people out there. It all starts with no obligation, 7 days worth of the programming, absolutely free. So whether you're joining, serving, or looking at the next chapter in your life, Fitness for the Frontline is designed by firefighters for firefighters. Now back to the show. Mate, that's great, because a lot of places just do the treadmill test every year or 2 years, don't they? And I just feel like that's really crap fitness assessment.
I think as a team, we're all quite like-minded individuals. We like to see where we're at, and I think the treadmill doesn't really show you where you're at properly.
No.
You need to get out in the wind. You need to feel it.
100%.
For us, it's we do it for shits and giggles as well. It's a laugh, and it's a bit of competition.
Well, that's also where we bond the strongest. You know what I mean? That's also when you do some of these tough courses or tough moments. That's where you bond, because misery loves company. Do you know what I mean? And you get a real strong connection with people. That's why sport gets such great connections, because you push.
I'm not giving in, because Stevie's not giving in. It's
we've got so John and I are obviously two of the crew leaders for the Scottish team. The third boy in our gang, Gav. He's just exactly the same, competitive. Gav will not stop until the other person does.
Yeah.
And it's just that one more shuttle, but that's what pushes each other on.
So take us back to Turkey, just for context again there, because we mentioned it earlier. So Turkey is one of the world's most active earthquake zones. It's located on the Anatolian plate, which is squeezed right in between two tectonic plates, so the Arabian and the Eurasian. And that's why whenever we hear that sort of area, we know they have them frequently, and they have not had one in a little while. So we had that initial confirmation. We had it come down through our leaders. Just connect the dots going up. So it comes down through UKISAR from, I was going to say National Resilience, but it comes from somewhere else first, doesn't it? What's the route back up to the top? It's National Resilience and then local government.
National Resilience, local government, and then Russ must get the say-so from the FCDO.
Yes. So Foreign Commonwealth Development Office or whatever it is.
I'm assuming that is the process. I'm obviously near the bottom of the food chain, so by the time it gets by the time it gets down to me, there's probably thousands of people know. We just wait on that call from our coordinator. But like you said earlier, we've all got GDACs, and when you've done
but they start filling in the virtual OSOG starts setting up quite quickly, doesn't it?
So straight away, the national coordinator. So at this moment, obviously Ross, he'll fill in that virtual OSOG and say that whether we're going to monitor it, and then he obviously has to go away and go through his channels, whatever they may be, going through FCDO and the Home Office to determine whether it is a viable option for us to be able to deploy that specific country, region, wherever we're going. And there's obviously a lot of work goes on behind the scenes for that, as we were obviously part of, not necessarily the work, but the hurry up and wait aspect of that while all that work's getting done.
Because it's also, when you say like giving it the all clear, it's a tricky area, because obviously people that are unfamiliar, it's right on the Syrian border, which is a place of contention and conflict and a little bit of uncertainty at the moment. So there was that aspect that needed signing off at government level.
Yeah, so I clicked onto the government's website just to have a look at the area as I was travelling north, and I thought, Syria, that's pretty close. And the government's website itself was advising no travel to the Hati region.
It's a little bit spicy there at the minute, I think.
It's a bit spicy, and it was, I think the city where we were actually based was 25 kilometres from the border, and we took that as being our hard border, that 25 kilometres, and we are not going to go any closer than that.
Because that was part of the factor when you were there, doing certain routes to certain places of work and stuff, wasn't it? It was trying to keep that distance.
Yeah. The safety and security officer, both of the guys had their work cut out for.
They did a fantastic job, mate. Colossal job, didn't they?
Yeah,
that's the cogs. Do you know what I mean? All those bits. And I actually had a wider understanding for this time, because I didn't get to go and play. I was part of that logistics, getting everybody there, getting everybody on the plane, sorting all the bits and bobs and the welfare in the background. And you forget, I don't know, you guys probably don't, but I was really poor at forgetting that sometimes. The amount of cogs and all the incredible people, Debs and all the other people that are getting people to the front line is a massive machine.
Such a big machine, isn't it?
Yeah,
such a big machine to get off the ground and then keep it fueled and all the rest of it to keep it going right the way, and then to repatriate it in the way back.
The decision was to send a heavy team. So heavy team is all the bells and whistles from UKISAR. 77, is it? 77 people on a heavy team?
Yep, plus 4 dogs.
I think they looked to take more than 4 dogs, but I think there was only 4 available at the time, just through sickness and availability.
Well, they pulled in what's his face, who had been retired for a little bit, but he's got such a colossal wealth of knowledge. The gentleman's name escapes me. I apologize.
Neil.
Yeah, love that guy.
Yeah, he's a nice lad.
He's proper
nice lad.
Proper top bloke.
And he's got a dog. Colin the dog.
Yeah. So
Colin the collie.
all of you guys and girls, we all got on board. We went to near Birmingham Airport. Where did we go?
Birmingham, yeah.
Birmingham Airport. I bloody drove. I'm terrible. So we got there, all met up, and then it was that hurry up and wait. Talk people through like what that initial processing looks like.
Well, that was a kind of strange thing for us, and I've deployed before and been an exercise, and because we all get together at DICE headquarters, it's right beside the airport. So we are always the first ones down to either London or Birmingham, which is really weird because we live furthest away, but we can get in a flight dead quick.
Yeah.
The first flight that we actually got from Aberdeen, our coordinator played an absolute blinder and managed to get on the first flight. And I think we got several gentlemen taken off of the flight so we could get on. So we were down rapid, and we came into the fire station down in Birmingham, and there was hardly anybody there. We were the first ones in the door.
Irony.
Which is bizarre. It's completely bizarre. There's guys that were actually from that station that arrived after us.
Boys are drilled. You boys are on it.
So it was just, it's a big hurry up, massive hurry up, and then waiting for ages, and it's ages, and it's the ISAR way.
Yeah. Well, we've got to get all those ducks in a row with then.
The kit comes from London, obviously. You know, the London stations, all the kit comes from there. It's got to be
all the equipment and the manifest.
Convoy, all equipment. And all the background stuff's got to get done. You know, FCDO are working their magic, government's working their magic, security guys are looking into the area, everybody's like, logistics are coming in place. We need runners and riders, people to help us out in country. Transport in country's got to be put in place. So much stuff had to be lined up before we could get on that plane. And it's actually having an understanding of that helps you with the waiting side. You know why we're waiting. It's just, it takes time. So it's a case of kick back, relax, use this time to, get on the system, have a look what's happening in Turkey, speak to your teammates, because, we were kind of 4 guys from Scotland. Stevie was put in charge of our team. So it's a case of getting in our team. We were Blue 2. The whole team was split up into 4, operationally. So it was a case of Stevie bringing everybody in, introducing everybody, and getting to know one another and our strengths, our backgrounds and stuff. So when we hit the ground, we'll have a good way of working together as a team.
How did you find that, Steve? Because didn't we do our crew leaders together last year?
We did.
Yep.
We all did it.
Yep,
Yes, sorry, we all did it. So this is your first time
for about 10 years, but it was the first time we did the course. So
yeah. This is your first time head honcho, sort of, Steve, leading up, working with teams that you hadn't met before or teams from all over the UK. What was that like, getting everybody together? How did you sort of manage it, navigate it? I mean, UKISAR are sometimes the nicest people to lead because we don't attract any dickheads, really.
Obviously, yeah,
with the exception of me. One always slips through the net.
So throughout, obviously, 2022, we'd had a lot of exercises overseas, which I was lucky enough to be at all of them. Just the way availability happened within our service, guys had put their names down and then couldn't go, so I stepped in at the last minute to take in certain roles. So obviously we've done Kosovo, and then Singapore, and then I went to Kinver as well, obviously down in the lovely Birmingham area. And whilst we were in Singapore, I'd picked up a functional role there. But prior to that in Kosovo, I'd actually worked with Jim Davison from Lancashire. He was assigned as my ops commander, and I was just one of these operators, and he was phenomenal to work for.
He's just a great mentor, isn't he?
Just mentor's probably the best description of him. And I've obviously become quite close with Jim over the last year. He's just excellent to work for.
I saw that picture of you two in the hot tub, actually.
Yeah. He's one of these guys that you would just run into battle for and think twice
You
about it.
trust him with your house, your kids, and he's that strong hand, but also he's unflappable. But he's stern, but he's not like unnecessarily harsh. He's just like
He's harsh when he needs to be, but he's got a really, really good way about him. Then after that, we'd done our crew leaders course after Kosovo, and then after that went to Singapore, and I picked up a post working for Jim Charston in Singapore, and he's another unbelievable mentor. So I had a good 4 or 5 month period and got a chance to work for both of them as an operational crew leader. And then the way the chips fell in Singapore, there was a movement, there was an inject, and I then picked up one of the ops commander posts after that, and it was becoming to feel like normal, and I was kind of learning on the job, which was fine. Went to Kinver, and Jim Davison was assigned as the team leader, and he straight away allocated me one of the ops commander posts. So I thought, well, that's fine, I could do that. Then when it came to going, obviously the call came in for Turkey. I had a list of the manifest of the passengers that were going, and I actually said to John on the plane, there's a lot of big hitters there. There's a lot of experience on that list. There's a lot of guys that are top ISAR operators. This is going to be good. Yeah, got to Bicken Jim Davison and Martin Ferrand from Manchester had been assigned to 2 ops commanders roles, and then lo and behold, I ended up picking up one of the crew lead posts, working under Jim. And initially it was like, oh, right, okay, but as soon as you get that shout and that nod from Jim, it's like, right, okay, he needs me to do a job. I'm going to go and do that job for him.
He's that sort of leader you want to do a great job for as well as.
Oh yeah, like the commitment I've got towards him's unwavering. He's brilliant to work for.
I feel like Pavlov's dog when I'm around him. I just want to do a good job for him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like that. You want to impress your parents. That's what he's like.
Yeah.
He's like
it is, isn't it?
He's like that work dad, and it's like you don't want to let him down. So yeah, and like I said, I would run into battle for him any day of the week.
Love it.
He just sets that good example, and I've learned a lot of him from over this past year. But not just him. My coordinator back in service has obviously done a fair bit of research and a fair bit of development as well. So it felt quite natural getting put into that post. And the guys and girls that I had within my team, Pete, I cannot speak highly enough about them. You
had a good pick. Not saying there was any bad picks, but your skill set and also just willingness, the mindset of some of the boys and girls that you had. We also mentioned earlier about the dogs. So we had 4 dogs. How do they get split? Just run us through a little bit the overarching. So we've got team leaders, we've got medics, we've got doctors, we've got dogs, we've got structural engineers. Try and give a bit of a rundown of what we're sending.
Yeah, the structure's quite easy. They don't overcomplicate it because I don't think it needs to be. So we'll take Turkey as an example, obviously, because it's a hot topic. They had a team leader who came from London, Dave O'Neill. Another unbelievable leader, just a proper leader of the troops. His motivation style and the way that he speaks to you.
With humour as well. Great bit of humour. Fantastic.
He just makes you want to run through a brick wall for him, just so you could hear what his motivation and his praise is going to be next. And yeah, I totally get why his London team are so loyal to him, because he's infectious. But then working alongside Dave as the team leader was the depth team leader, a lad, Steve Davis from Wales. Again, I'd never actually met Steve before. He was brilliant. He was really, really good, really interesting sort of guy. Obviously being a Celtic cousin as well, it made it a bit easier. And then off the side of Steve, they had the 2 safety and security officers. And then the operations commanders then head up a section each, one for red, one for blue. And then under each ops commander, you had a crew leader, splitting the red sections into red 1, red 2, and blue 1 and blue 2. Within your team, you've then got a deputy team leader, without confusing it too much. And then you've got a dedicated sector medic, a dedicated heavy rig and slinger, a dedicated logistics in bed, and then a dedicated UMT. So we had Deb Swan, and then finally, last but not least, you've got your search and rescue operators, along with your dog handler.
Yeah, we had 4 handlers with this one. We had a vet as well, didn't we, Vicky? Vicky's actually coming on the podcast soon. She's fascinating. She's a great girl.
She wasn't in my team, but she was taking my dogs.
Well, the dogs had a couple of injuries as well. We'll come on to them at some point. So getting us out there. So we got all the kit down, we got it loaded, we got everything like that. But then, due to some challenges, you boys and girls had a little sleepover in the runway, in the terminals, didn't you?
Yeah. It was a case of find a bench. And I think it was Costa Coffee or that. I think one of these coffee shops we managed to duck down in, found a comfy seat, and that was it for the night.
Love it. So what time did you actually head out in the morning?
I don't think we actually left until about lunchtime, Pete, if I remember rightly.
Really?
They kept us in the main international departures area of the airport, but there was people coming and going, and I think you know what we're like when we're all stood around dressed in navy, orange patches on, and all these bags about. People then started to ask the questions, and then they were looking at the news, seeing what was happening, asking us what was going on, and they've seen us sitting there for a bit of time. So at that point, I thought, right, we better move them out of here. So they selected a gate, which was a bit off the beaten track, and they put us down there, out of sight and out of mind. Yeah. Once that was done, we weren't actually at that gate long before we started to board. So I'm lucky if it was half an hour and we were on the jet. But then we sat on the tarmac for a bit as well, just waiting on all the kit getting loaded on properly.
Yeah, had to go on and come off a few times, didn't it? So talk to us about arriving in country, the big flight out there. What was it like when you actually got down, boots on the ground, the weather, the atmosphere, the organisation? How did it feel?
We got off the plane. To be fair, there wasn't much to see. It was dark. It was night time when we arrived. You could see all the other like military aircraft that were arriving from various countries, getting their kit off, getting their vehicles off. We went into there's a VIP area for a briefing from the local government in Lima, and you could sense a bit of panic in the atmosphere. There was hundreds of people coming and going. It was hustle and bustle, wasn't it, Stevie? We were just shoulder to shoulder with loads of different organisations and people coming and going.
TV cameras were already there. It seemed to be a very, very small passageway between the tarmac and then the actual country, I suppose, and they try to shoehorn every single person through this area. And it was cold. That was probably one thing to say. Even coming from our neck of the woods, it was cold. It was noticeable how cold it was.
There was a fair wait as well. We had to wait a good few hours, get the transport all organised and get our buses and equipment to move on to Antakya.
So where is that? Where the boo is going to be set up? So the base of operations and that initial sort of
So they got a cracking place actually. Hatay, the region. It was Hatay Football Club Stadium that we got camped outside in their car park, not too far from the city of Antakya. When we arrived, there was some tents already in place. What was the charity? AFAD. So AFAD had already put out a load of tents for displaced people. I think the Italian rescue team were on the road in. We managed to get a great little compound at the back. We managed to get some fences and fenced it off. There wasn't many people actually in our side of the stadium at all. It's a great little place. Got the booth set up, I think, in record time. We all just got stuck in. 2 hours to get the whole booth.
2 hours, 15 minutes, I think, to set the whole lot up, plus the security at both sides. It was coordinated pretty well. Robin and Baz were pretty much on the money there.
They're bloody good, aren't they? It's a good little team that always sort the boo out. They've really got a great setup. Every time we do these exercises, they're pretty well drilled now.
You know what? You feel sorry for them a bit because, like, they get carted all over the world and they've basically become our housemaids, and sometimes they don't even get out on the ground. But on this occasion, Hampshire actually had part of the rescue team. They formed part of the rescue team, so they had another 5, I think, from memory out as well.
You feel that for logistics as well sometimes, and that's it's a good reflection of the team leaders to recognise that they do have the skill sets as well and pulling them into it. But again, their humility and their ability to discipline themselves to go, our role is this, and this is an essential part. And without a safe boo and all that sort of stuff, everything else will just crumble around it anyway.
Yeah.
So what were those first few challenges over the first few days? You've got the boo set up. So we got started to get an understanding of local services that were operating, places that were worst hit, and then before we get out and do that initial recce.
I think the first few challenges were probably one, getting the sector identified. So that obviously comes through the UKISAR coordination cell, through the command and control, down to us on the ground, and it was just basically like, this is going to be our sector. The coordination at that point wasn't quite all in. So this is going to be where you're going. We don't actually have a sector letter to allocate, so it's on the left-hand side of the river, so we're just going to call it Romeo for River. That was as basic as it went. We called it the pizza shape because that's what it looked like. It looked like the pizza wedge on the map, right at the bottom. Identifying feature was a roundabout, and then halfway up the sector, another roundabout, and at the top end of the sector, another roundabout. So there were good focal landmarks. But the first time we tried to get there, the traffic, probably due to the infrastructure and the amount of ambulances going by,
it was just gridlock.
It was gridlock. It was absolute pandemonium, and we were on this coach trying to get in amongst this traffic, and it wasn't happening for the best will in the world. And we were obviously trying to go in from the top end of the sector. Once we got around that top roundabout, Jim Davison and Martin just made the call, right, let's just get off this bus and let's just walk this sector.
It was actually a good idea. We got a chance to actually see, before we got starting to work, we got a chance to see the sector, have a look at it, and get a feel for the area as well.
Just give us an understanding when we talk about sectors.
Out of the way,
Sorry, because people will be thinking, and they'll be hearing sectors, and they'll be like, oh yeah, like when I sectorize an incident. Yeah, sort of, but the scale of this...
Sectorising a major city.
Yeah, just sectorising a city, just basically drawing a box or a pizza shape around a collection of buildings. And in our case, I don't know, it probably could have been about 1,000 buildings, 2,000 buildings.
This is what I'm saying. It's the scale of that. We still have 77 people. That's a lot. I could handle an incident with that easy.
It was huge.
No, this is colossal.
It was a massive sector, and we were basically setting in on that. What was our first day, but would have been day 3 post-shock.
Yeah.
To start carrying out our ASR level 2, which is worksite triage. We're going worksite triage. So we're looking to identify what is work sites, what are viable and what are not. When we do it in training, Pete, you've been there, you've done it. You walk up to a building that's standing, nothing wrong with it, and there's a picture of a building that looks like it's collapsed on the outside.
Yeah.
On the crew leader course that we done, we were lucky enough to take part in the virtual reality ASR, which was a really, really good experience.
I thought it was bloody good, wasn't it?
It was good, yeah. I found that to be probably the most beneficial, the most realistic training-wise. But just getting into that sector that day and walking in that sector and seeing the level of devastation, I was walking that road thinking, yep, don't know where we're going to start, but once we get to the starting point...
give people an understanding. When we're talking ASR 2, we don't actually take a massive amount of kit with us, if any at all, and just try and talk us through that self-discipline that's involved with, like, there's no point lumping around all your blooming breaking and breaching kit or any of your bloody kit, because that's not what you're there for. And that discipline of, okay, yeah, if there's a snatch rescue, okay, we'll do some assistance, but what level of pulled into an incident do we allow ourselves to get? And I think those first ones are the most difficult because you've got to have that discipline not to get involved.
So easy to get pulled in, especially when you've got every few meters, you've got old women crying, men crying, kids crying, pulling you in to look for their relatives. Come in here and help us with the rescue team, and trying to explain to them our job right now is really to get an assessment of this area and find out where we can work. And that will help us save a lot more people when we do.
It makes you feel like a disaster tourist, though, even though that's not where you are. You've got to get that initial assessment, because there might be something of greater benefit further down the road, and it's that bit you've got to discipline. And it's so damn hard, I bet.
yeah, I mean, especially when folk are physically trying to pull you and get you to go into their house and look for their kids. I found it hard. I was a sector medic, but I mean, Stevie was the spearhead pushing through, and he had a lot of hard decisions to make and hard conversations. I think hard conversations to make with people. And
how did you manage that, Steve? Because you'll have had, people, even your members of your team going, "Hey, Steve, look, I think this is worth it. I think this is worth a little look." And you having that discipline to go, "Yeah, okay, I hear you. I appreciate you. No, we're going to push forward."
Probably the training. We'll probably come on to later about how is the training. Did it help you prepare or didn't it help you prepare? When the debrief afterwards that were facilitated, I had an overwhelming response from the troops that our training did prepare us for that deployment. And the training that we've done working towards the IER, which we'll maybe speak about later on, we've been heavy focused on ASR because it was identified that it was one of our weaknesses.
Yeah.
So all that training that we've done about ASR, like, let's go, we're not going to affect rescues, we're only here to identify work sites. I had that in my head that that's what we're going to do. So it will be a case of building, sweep, move on, building, sweep, move on. If it was snatch rescue, if it was viable, yeah, I'll make that call, but that's what we're going to do. After the first couple of buildings, Pete, I kind of just went into that zone, and that's what we were doing. The team, they got it after the first couple of buildings. They realised that, right, okay, he's been quite direct with people, so we're just going to follow that lead.
Well done.
We could have easily went to that first building that we came to, Pete, and we probably still would have been there now. That was the level of devastation and the level of work that was required to then identify that as pretty much every building was an ASR 4, so you're going to be taking longer than your 12 hours, and you're needing a heavy UKISAR team there. So, yeah, making that judgment calls like, right, no, this is what we're here to do today. We're here to work site triage, let's go. And we covered a lot of buildings on that first day on the ground. We walked a fair distance, carrying the packs. We had a couple of aftershocks as well, so we got to experience that quite early. And we also had a bit of success as well, because the dog had indicated on, I think, 2 buildings that day. Obviously, we'd also passed a couple of work sites that other teams were working at, not INSARAG teams, but other teams had been working at, so we mapped them up after a bit of discussion. Again, you think, right, we're just going to come by, we're just going to mark this as a live work site. They were like, no, you're not getting anywhere near this, because you see us coming like the Orange Brigade, walking down the street, and it took a couple of difficult conversations. Like, no, we're not here to take over your rescue. That you guys are doing a really, really good job there. Keep working hard, stay safe, but we're just going to mark this so we could feed that back into the coordination cell.
When we speak about the dogs identifying, so I mean, the dogs are such an essential skill set because they give you that next level of what's the viability of a rescue in this element. But other than that, what's the rationale or what's the process in your heads with triaging the viability of certain buildings?
Well, if I could put a dog there, it sounds terrible. The dogs are our best asset.
Yeah.
They cover a large area of ground very, very quickly. They're a lot lighter, so they're not liable to move rubble piles with their weight. And therefore, twofold, I don't have to commit my life teammates onto that rubble pile with the chance of them slipping, them hurting themselves, slip, slips and falls, anything falling on top of them, or like we did experience when we were there, the aftershocks while the team are committed. That's the advantage of the dogs. The disadvantage is the concrete was so thick in some places that they're just not going to get a response. They're not going to get a live indication because, well, maybe the airflow might not be in the right place for where the casualties may or may not be located. The flow of air and where the voids and where it's exposed, they might just not be in the right area, which is unfortunate. But you've got to go with the dog handler's experience. They know how to read their animals. They know how to interpret what the dog's telling them, and they're also really, really good at feeding that back to me as the incident commander about what they think is viable and what they think isn't.
You've also got a time cap with the dogs as well, haven't you? Because it's so much stimulation for them. It's a discipline for them to rest them and not give them too much exposure. because it's just so overwhelming for them, the smell, the sight, the noise, the debris, and that's why they're so great. But also, they get worn out.
Yeah, they're not too dissimilar from us. They get fatigue, they get nose fatigue, and it happened. I think on one particular day, Davy, Lindsay's dog, I think he'd done 50 searches.
That would be the second day he got 50 searches.
50 searches in, and that's a crazy amount of searches, because he's not going to have ever experienced that in his fire service career in the UK, doing 50 searches in a day. Touched on the terrain and the dogs getting injured. It was full of sharps. It was full of things that were going to hurt the dogs, and all the dogs got injured at some point. And cuts to paws, thankfully nothing serious. But we did lose one dog for a couple of days because of the depth of the cut. So then we're
just to give people that don't have an understanding, we do obviously put in a lot of work to ensure the welfare of the animals. They have things to protect their feet. They have torches. They have all sorts of stuff, and the handler is never too far away. But the nature of, like you say, it's just sharps everywhere. The dog is that stimulated, and it's that, and you need that in one of them. Some of them don't pass the accreditation process because they are not hungry enough or driven enough. So it's that balance. Yeah, they've got to be wired. It's not a domestic animal that's going to live inside with you all the time and cuddle up on the sofa. It's a working dog, but it's tough for some people to understand that. We're not putting them in exposed places because they're sacrificial. That's what they're bred for.
No. And you've got to go with what the handlers tell you. If the handlers say, like, you know what, the dog's had enough, need to rest her for a bit, then that's what you do. It's like, yeah, totally. Because they are one of the troops, effectively. The 100%. Troops need rest. The troops need fed. The troops need water. The dogs are exactly the same.
So we did those initial AR2s. What sort of areas did we decide when we came back, fed it all into the command and control? What were we looking at for the next following days, John?
Well, to be fair, I mean, we did do a lot of ASR2s. A lot of our information was coming from people on the ground when we did that first walk. A lot of it was not even walking over the rubble. It was locals actually coming up to us and weighing a lot of it up. Some of the rescues was video evidence. They would come with their phone. This is the casualty. We've seen them under the ground. It was really tough. Over there, the culture's obviously different than ours. The Muslim culture, they need to get their dead out. They need to get them washed, and they need to get them buried. And we totally got that and understood that. It was trying to decipher whether they wanted in that rubble pile to extract the dead, or was it genuinely they wanted us to get in there to extract living casualties.
Because with the greatest respect, our priority does have to be savable life, but obviously we respect their values and stuff like that.
We got their priorities was slightly different to ours as well. With extracting the dead, and we totally respected that and got that. But it's trying to kind of decipher: is it a live casualty or is it a dead casualty they're after us to go and pull out of this? Especially with the language barrier, it didn't help. Saying that, we got a lot of help from volunteers. That came from as far as Istanbul. They drove down. It was a 14-hour drive. They arrived at our camp, or they met us in the street, and we got a really good relationship with them, and they embedded them in the team.
Beautiful.
What's the name of the chap that was All-J was with us for a lot of the time, and he was just this guy hadn't been part of the team. At one point, he was down the tunnel with us. We couldn't have done what we did without All-J's help, without the information that we were getting back from the casualties, how many was in there, where they are, what kind of state they're in, their injuries, etc., etc., etc. We wouldn't know any of that.
But also just general things about like the way houses are put together, the general layouts, the construction types, all of this stuff that you would see something and go, oh, does that mean this? And they go, no, they have them in all these types of buildings, or that actually means this. Or you see that sign over there, that stands for this.
That did come into play, actually,
there
did come into play with that. Yeah.
There was various interpreters that were actually assigned to us. And they were at the boo every morning there waiting for us. But then this lad, All-J, he, like John had said, he travelled from Istanbul. He knew he spoke good English, and he just wanted to come down and help. And Jim Davison actually stumbled across him on the street and basically took a hold of him and says, right, you are exactly what I need. He was basically the Turkish version of Jim. He was direct, he was straight to the point, and he didn't mess about. So Jim asked him to say something, and he said it as Jim had said it. And it got to the point where him and Jim had such a good working relationship that when they arrived at a work site, Jim didn't have to brief them. He just went in and said to them, "This is what we're here to do." We'd been fortunate on the first day that we'd arrived. There was 2 volunteers that came and helped us. There was a male and a female. The female, she was quite young, but she was really, really good. And she had a sort of sympathetic way about her. The other lad that was with her, I assume, was maybe her partner. He was the complete opposite. He was totally eccentric and totally blew everything out of proportion. So we were using those 2 with us on that first day. Like I say, she was excellent. So I was communicating with her and basically trying to ignore this other lad because he was just becoming a bit of a pain.
Yeah.
And he had to be politely told not to speak to anyone because he was going along that theme of, if I say one sentence, he says a couple of paragraphs. Yeah. And it's like, no, that's not what I'm wanting these people to know. That's not the information I'm needing. There was another lad like that as well who was actually assigned to the team, and Jim Davison was like, "No, you're causing more bother than you're worth. If you're not coming out with me again," he effectively sacked them.
That's that beautiful bit of assertiveness that people like yourself, Jim, and loads of members of the team have. Because some people are like, "Oh, no, you got to feel for them." And yet we get that. We're there. We're sympathetic. We're empathetic. I get that. But you can waste a lot of time. People's survivability is clicking across.
Time was of the essence. We were running short of time from the minute we left the UK, so we couldn't waste any time.
And I think because tensions did get quite high. Obviously, you can understand. There was thousands of people lying under the rubble. There was thousands of families wanting their kids, their parents out. Tensions were, you could feel it in the atmosphere. And if you got an interpreter that was saying the wrong thing to these people, things would kick off. We came close a couple of times. We thought might be in a bit of bother here. We might have to get ourselves out of Dodge pretty quickly. As I say, there was times where we moved on from. We sent the dog in. The dog didn't indicate, or the dog indicated, telling us that there probably is somebody in there, but they're deceased. Unfortunately, try to break that news diplomatically to somebody's hard at the best of times. When there's that language barrier in there as well, it can get misconstrued, and they see everybody walking away.
Yeah, 100%.
You can imagine the feelings that are going around.
Yeah, I found the best way to deal with that was to get the team to head off in smaller groups. Yeah. So if the dog was not indicating, as the case may be, it was quite evident. Without being a dog handler, you watch the dogs after 3, 4, 5 searches, and you start to understand their behaviour and you start to understand what the dog handler's going to say to you. That's when I'd say to the team, right, could you just pack up? Before you just start moving on, rendezvous at that point there, and then a couple of minutes later, could the next 4 move? Could the next 4 move? To the point where it was just basically myself and maybe 2 others left behind, and then we just follow on. So it's not like a mass exodus. It's not like, okay, nothing to see here, let's move on. It was maybe just a little bit more tact, like you say, a little bit more diplomacy.
That's that beautiful protective bubble that a leader needs to create, where it's like, no, don't talk to my team. I'm here. I'm engaging with you. I'm your point of contact, and let them slowly do their thing. And then you're that last string to cut and go, okay, thank you. I've heard you.
The first few days, I would probably say I was quite direct most of the time, without being rude, but I think that's what the area needed at the time. Certainly by the time the week went on, the soft skills in me developed no end, and I hugged a lot of men as that week went on, because the soft skills had to be. The phrase that you used right at the start was spicy. Yeah, it got spicy, especially when it got dark. When it got dark, that city took on a different feel. There was a completely different feel, completely different atmosphere to it, because we were just going on torchlight, basically, because there was no street lighting. The noise was just incredible, Pete. 24/7, sirens. Diggers going, people shouting, people screaming. It was like nothing I'd certainly experienced before. Was the noise. It was incredible, and especially at night. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was a time difference or a time delay or something, but as soon as it got dark, it seemed to get busier.
Well, when darkness falls, that social structure seems to break down even more. We had a firefighter who was present at Haiti during the initial quake there, and he was telling me how so many of the women and children and the general population, but when the darkness falls, that social structure seems to descend, and as the days progress, aid, food, desperation starts turn people, not viciously, but just out of that natural animalistic intent of, I need to look after number one a little bit here. And that's where you boys and girls have always got to make sure, like you said, the boo has that security. People are like, what are you trying to say? People are horrible and they're going to hurt. No, people just get desperate, and that's understandable. Think about if you're family and children, you just lost your home, you don't know where your food's coming from, and there's no end, there's no perceivable end to what's happening at the moment. So yeah, you can understand that, but it's a very, very difficult position for you guys to be in.
Yeah, we didn't seen that through the camp. We had people try to walk through the camp, and there was people that were trying to take our kit. But I got that. I understood why. So I wasn't mad with anybody. If I seen somebody going to pick something up, I just, put that back down. Off you go. Yeah. But you couldn't be angry with them, because you could put yourself in their place. If my kids were under the rubble, I'd be doing the same. I'd be getting 100%. Your kit. I'd be going.
But yourself, you're like, we have the skill set to use this to its best application in the right place. It's no different than people getting up to a pump and trying to pull all the hose off for you and trying to do something. You're like, don't do that. We've got a process. We've got a system. We're here. We're going to do it. We're going to get it done. But you need to let us do it.
And people would generally understand. They would get it. When we explained to them, we had a fair bit from the military. The Turkish military gave us a good security cordon at one particular incident. When a lot of our kit was starting to get lifted and we had to move it in a different area. The army came in. Stevie used the Turkish TV. He gave an interview to explain what we were actually doing. I think it was a protracted incident. We were there for, I think, 20 hours, and people were getting a bit upset why we were taking so long. I think you explain it better, because you were the face of ISAR that night.
Yeah, Jim and Martin and I had a discussion, and it was starting to get dark. The locals had been there, had then left, and they started to come back again, and they were starting to get just irate. They were asking, basically, why are you taking so long? If there's people in there, why is it taking so long for you to rescue them? So Jim decided, you know what, let's put Algie in, let's put the interpreter in, and let's film it, and let's get it out to Turkish media as quick as we can. And Martin was like, yeah, totally, that's a good idea. Now, that's something that you'd never do back in service in the UK. You do that, you'd be final written warning daughters.
It so frustrates me though, because people want to hear that. They just want to hear that you're trying. Help them understand the why and the what behind it, and then they'll appreciate why the how is taking a little bit longer. But we're rubbish at that.
We've done that, and we put the footage to Turkish TV, and then I gave a quick interview to the Turkish TV, and Pete, it was within minutes. All these people that were standing about very irate then became really, really willing and wanted to help us. There was bottles of water.
Food started
arriving. Sandwiches started arriving. Domino's pizza started arriving. And it sounds ridiculous. It was Domino's pizza. Yeah, it was cold, but it was Domino's pizza. The thought was there that they just wanted it. Right, okay. So John's phrase, an army marches on its belly. The water, the food, the sandwiches, and you're just thinking, right, okay, yeah, they want to keep us fed and water, because they see what we're trying to do here. They could see that it's difficult. They could see that it's dangerous, and they know that we've got to be slow and methodical with it.
So give us an understanding, after we'd done those initial recce's, we'd done our AR2s, we'd started prioritising sites that we wanted to work at, we'd got that relationship with the local services. Talk us about when we started getting to work and those first few rescues that started popping up.
So on the first day when we carried out, when the blue team has carried out all of our ASR2s, like I said, we covered quite a large area. We'd had a couple of hits with the dog, but we actually hadn't had any rescues as such. So we decided we'd make contact with the other blue team who were in a similar sector to us, different street, and turns out they'd had a live rescue. And it was like, all right, okay. Met up at the rendezvous point later at night, and both the red teams had rescues as well. And it was like, all right, okay. So we were the only team out of the four, I think. I think maybe one of the other red teams hadn't had any live rescues. And it was like, oh, right, okay. Oh, didn't realise that we were rescuing. But yeah, it just wasn't to be for us that day. But what it did allow us to do was get a really, really good feel for the city or the sector that we were in. And it also allowed us to figure out where we were in relation to everything else. So on the next day, we started at the bottom of the sector, done exactly the same again. Got dropped off in the middle this time, walked to the bottom of the sector, didn't engage in any, had an eyes on, got the feel for what was happening that day. As soon as we got to the bottom of the sector, turned, started walking back up, and straight away we were met by, I think there's people in here. So, our sector, let's go, put the dogs over it. While that was going on, a gentleman approached me with his mobile phone. Just one man on his own. He wasn't excited. He wasn't too pushy. He just basically showed me his phone. Showed me a video. Within the video, there was a gentleman and a young boy, maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old. And I asked him, the interpreter had with me at the time, I says, look, what, could you tell me what the timestamp on this video is? I'm not interested in the contents of the video. Just tell me the timestamp. And this was about, I think it was about 11 o'clock in the morning at this point. And the interpreter says, oh, it was just after midnight this morning. And I thought, right, okay. Okay, where is it? Well, pointed to it on the map. It was a couple of streets out with our sector.
Slightly off.
And I thought, do or don't I? And I thought, you know what, let's go for it. I said to the interpreter, how long will it take us to get there? He says, oh, it's just up there and to the left. Of course, everything's just up there. But unfortunately, just up there to the left, it would have been just up there to the left, but unfortunately, every single building on that street had fell onto the road, so we had to go the long way around. So yeah, we got there, and it was basically down, not quite a side street, but we were down a street, and there wasn't anyone else on the street. The lad walked us right to the building, and I'd asked John and one of the other lads, Keith, right, do you want to just go up that little bit to the side of the building and have a look, but please be careful. Yeah, no bother. I sent another couple of the team back to get a ladder that we'd passed on the walk. Go and get a ladder, pitch that ladder up there, and see if you could see anything, see if you could hear anything. And Pete, within 15 seconds, John's like, yeah, I could hear someone. No, there's a boy screaming in here. And it was like, all right, okay, here we go. Right, now I need to get you up there. So I think it was originally the third floor or fourth floor and became the second floor. Yeah. So yeah, John and Keith went the way in and identified that this man was very much alive. It wasn't the man from the video. The man from the video had sadly he'd passed away, and the small child had actually been removed just prior to us arriving. But yeah, this other gentleman was alive. So there, and then we started initiating.
Was he entombed? Was he trapped underneath something?
John will give you the rundown on that one.
He was quite deep into the building. So I had a good rummage about and tried to find an easier way in. So we didn't, like you say, we don't carry much kit when we're out and about. I had a hand hammer and a handsaw and took down a couple of walls. Found an alternative route through a kitchen wall, got down into it, and I could see a hand sticking out underneath a massive beam. The guy had been in a kind of cobra position, face up against this beam on the other side of the beam for the last few days.
Jesus.
Unfortunately, I believe it to be his mother and father were beside him. They had both passed away at this point, but the thing that got me was they were both holding hands.
Fucking hell.
But it was quite obvious to see that they had passed away at that point, and so I covered them over, and I think at that point it clicked with the casualty that, oh no, they've gone, and there was a bit of despair. I managed to get doctor, myself, so Debs was in with us as well, giving him a once over. I was trying to get up through past him. It was very, very tight. He was pinned by the legs. I think his right leg was pinned under his father's leg, which was also pinned under a massive 30-ton beam. So it just took bit by bit to cut away, dig away by hand. I don't know if you've done your BA refresher when you've got to do the Superman position going through the letterbox.
Yeah.
It was like that, just like tiny little bit by bit. I managed to get up past him to his legs. And
how did you feel? Sorry, like being in that position, knowing you'd had aftershocks. We obviously have a good look at the building and everything like that, but being in there, how much do you stop yourself getting like blinkered into that, and it's
very
that's
easily
the
done.
hardest bit,
Very
I
easily
think.
done. You talk about shoring as you go. We did our best to put up shoring where we could. And great shoring we'll have here. Go to Aitchison's, get your 4x4s, no bother. I was literally cutting table legs off to put them up. It was mines rescue type shoring. And really, for me and the rest of the guys, it was an indicator if it was going to collapse. It probably wouldn't have held up much, but it would have given us some notice if it creaked and groaned.
Yeah.
That was the deal. I said to people, if you hear that creaking, if you see it getting tensioned up, then we're out of here. And funny you say about aftershocks. We had a fairly decent aftershock while I was in that position inside. Stevie will maybe fill you in on that bit. I think he got more of a scare than I did.
So you've got a team in there, mate, and you've got that. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Committed the team in. John, Keith, and Debs at that point were in contact with the casualty. I had Emma and the other Steve were basically acting as the top of the ladder and the bottom of the ladder as spotters for them, for John and for Keith and Debs. And then outside would obviously put in were tally systems, so it was all accountable. Had managed to set up a cordon, believe it or not, outside using the army and the police, basically just to keep the locals back. Had established emergency rendezvous points, the whole lot. And I'm thinking, right, this is going all right. This is going fine. The options for the casualty at that point, they weren't great. So I'd asked Debs if she could maybe give us a better option rather than cutting the guy in half. If you could maybe just get him out in one piece, that would be preferred. And she's like, well, I kind of need Malcolm here for that. So got Malcolm to come along as well from the sector that he was on. So he came in to assist. Malcolm ended up in the tunnel, the hole as well. And at that point, it shook. And everything moved. There was things falling about. And I genuinely, hand on heart, thought I'd killed my mate. I thought, God, I've committed him in. I don't know how I'm going to explain this one away, but everything that's in there is probably going to be on top of him, because John had actually filmed it to show me and then passed his phone out to show me what the conditions were like. So in my head, I was like, well, that movement there, that's got to have killed him.
How much does your arse fall out when something like that is just...
Pete, it didn't even bounce. It just hit the floor and just stayed there, mate. The first person out the hole was the gentleman that initially approached us. So he was acting as an interpreter because he spoke Arabic, as did the casualty, and it was his cousin. I also had another interpreter interpreting from the Arabic speaker to the guys that were in there. So the first guy was the cousin, the initial gentleman. He came out. He flew out this tunnel and he came out this alleyway like a bull out of a gun. Then the second interpreter wasn't far behind them, and then Deb Swan, she came out just as quick. And then when Keith and John weren't coming out, that was at the point I thought, oh no. But I heard through obviously my spotters that no, John says he's all right, nothing's moved, he's fine, he's not coming out, because if he comes out, he's going to take too long to get out, and then to get back in, he doesn't want to leave the casualty. And I was like,
what did that feel like, John, when you felt it in there and it's shaking and you're like, well, I can't get out of here quick. I'm like, I'm not going to get out anyway.
I've resigned myself. Yeah, I was committed, fully committed, and I resigned myself. Look, the shores had put up. If they didn't move, they didn't make a sound. Nothing was coming down on top of us. A bit of dust. And I honestly said to Steve, it was, look, mate, it's going to take me about 5-10 minutes to get my arse down here. Then you've got to climb down to the ground floor, then get out onto the street with my respirator on, take it off to tell you what's happening, to then come back in again. I was like, I'm safe. This is as safe as it's going to be. Nothing's moving. We've got to get on with this. So I'm going to crack on, mate. And he's like, yeah.
It's so scary, isn't it? It's a bit like, for firefighters in the UK, it's like having somebody all the way deep inside a BA job. You're seeing some stuff happening from the outside. You don't know what it's like on the inside. Yeah. You've just got to, that's where you can't micromanage. You've got to trust the eyes and the ears. They have got the best understanding.
I had this guy, my casualty, with me, who he was upset. He was screaming. I thought, right. And as well, I'm not leaving him. I just felt, I've contacted the guy, I've connected with the guy. I'm not going to leave you in here. You know, it's and again, I actually felt fine. I felt safe enough. It wasn't. I think Stevie got the big fright on the outside. I thought, yeah, that's an aftershock. It moved a bit, but we've got a job to do. And I think you get heightened and you get super focused on the task in hand. And I thought, well, this is going to take valuable time. This guy needs out here yesterday, so let's crack on.
So yeah, from my point of view, I've committed not just an operator, not just a sector medic into that. I've committed my mate into there, and that was probably the first time I realised that. All right, okay, yeah, this has got the potential to go south at any point. But the good thing from my point of view is I wouldn't have wanted anyone else in there, not because I wanted to kill him, but I know what his capabilities are, and I know if he's saying to me, yeah, I'm fine, then I know he's fine. And if I know he's saying I can't come out of here, I know why he's saying it. Now, back home, back in the UK, we've all got those people that we've worked with, the hardcore fireys on the ship that, no, I'm just going to do that, I'm going to do that, and they never want to rotate around, they never want to give up the tools, they never want to do that. John's not like that.
Yeah,
he knows,
got that self-awareness, whereas
he knows when the time's right, and he knows when it's time to go. So when I heard that, I've got to stay, I was like, right, okay, that's fine.
Be honest, had you started divvying up his kit already, or had you dibs him?
Well, when I heard he was all right, I thought, I better go and start putting that stuff back in his bag.
Better put his boots back.
My rations are gone. I was like, where's my meal? I don't think you need it.
The rations are gone. I'd had the brownie. That was mine already.
But at that point, it was a case of, right, then John will tell you how they went about getting them out, but I started to rotate the crews. He probably wasn't happy at that point, but I thought, right, this isn't going to be done in an hour. Let's get John out. Let's get some fresh bodies in. Let's get them doing some proper donkey work.
Yeah.
Then it's going to come a time where when that guy's coming out, I need John back in there again.
Such an important discipline, that is. So important.
I was chin strapped. I was ready to come out. I was quite happy to come out at that point. I pretty much just worked myself to the bone, and I thought, right, he's just about out. I could probably go at this for another 20 minutes and get him out, but it was the right call and it was the right time. And I thought, nah, stuff it, I'm ready to swap. So I think it literally took another 20 minutes and they got the chap out. We ended up digging right underneath them.
Mm-hmm.
It was just space creation, mate. It was loads of space creation, but it took a bit of time. I think it was Tony went back in, and Malcolm Russell and Josh, and they released the guy within about 20 minutes of me getting out. Then it was a case of
what we're going to do when Malcolm leaves. Malcolm's another magician, colossal bloody wealth of knowledge. Oh my god!
I mean, I was telling Steve when I'm a medic geek, as you know, and to work alongside like one of the world's best.
Oh my god, like, he's on my hit list. The stories that man has got. Oh my god.
I was putting on the pelvic splint that he invented, and I was giving him a hand with it, and I did ask him at the time, "Hey mate, have you done this before?"
Yeah.
I just got the side eye, and I thought, "Oh, this is quite good."
Yeah, you know what you trained to do? I invented that. Okay, yeah, sorry. Okay.
But and getting the guy released from where he was pinned down was just only part of it. We're still two stories up, so I had to think about what rigging we're going to use, and we all had one rope, a couple of carabiners, a couple of slings. At that point, we had
Tony had made up Tony and Scott Meekins to fabricate a stretcher outside, which they'd done out of
headboard, was it?
Part of a ladder, part of a headboard, part of a mattress, and a lot of wet duvets. And they'd fabricated something pretty good, which I think would have worked, but it probably wasn't the best in the world given the guy's injuries. However, managed to get an ambulance. I was told that the ambulance had a stretcher, so I'd asked the ambulance crews if they could just head off and get that stretcher for me. And then it was at that point where they're like, actually, the ambulance is gone.
Jesus.
Yeah. So that was when I then had to ask a couple of the lads, right, boys, can you go and do me a favour? Could you just go and to some street, whatever street from here, and try and find an ambulance and get it here, and I really, really need a stretcher. So right enough, Ian and Keith went away, And then they came back 5 minutes later, and Keith was running down the street with a sprint and a panic. Steve, I've got a stretcher. I was like, brilliant. And Ian was about 10 yards further behind him. And an ambulance. I was like, brilliant, boys. And half the city.
It literally was half the city.
And it was like the Pied Piper was running down the road and everyone was... It was manic. So we managed to keep this relatively quiet street cordoned off. Excuse me. And it was at that point, everyone's running because they've obviously like, okay, these guys have got a live rescue to take. It was...
But that's dangerous. You know, when people start clambering over stuff for the best of intentions, that's
I
didn't
see this
in the bubble park.
By that time, I was back inside. I'd gone back inside to sort of help with the rigging and getting the rope system set up for lowering the chap down. But I didn't see it, but I could hear what was going on. I could hear the commotion.
Yeah.
Then I could hear Stevie at the top of his voice telling him to back off, and getting all the crowds right back. So I knew I could hear there was a bit of commotion going on outside. And for me, that part of the transition of taking the chap from the second floor down to what was now the ground floor was the most scariest bit, because I thought we've done such a good job of getting the guy out. He's got some really pretty bad crush injuries. Any wrong movement could kill the guy. And at that point, before the stretcher arrived, I thought, we're taking him down on a headboard.
Thanks very much.
Just manhandle him down. So that for me, that was the scariest bit. It wasn't the aftershock. It wasn't the confined space. It was actually getting that guy from the second floor down a sheer.
Dropping him on his head after the rescue really looks terrible, doesn't it?
Yeah. So when I seen that, when Keith came in with the stretcher, I was like, oh my word, thank the Lord. There's a lot of prayers answered in that 4 hours, but that was the biggest one. I was like, wow, a stretcher. Rope capability stretcher, fantastic.
Well, people forget, like when we do all of our long extrications down tunnels and stuff like that maneuvering somebody out, even if you've got a great, sked stretcher or whatever, it's still a lot of hard labor to move a human body that far.
Yeah. I think that I talked about on the outside, if I could get a sked, the best thing to do would have been cut a sked in half.
Yeah.
And apparently I've not seen it myself, but you do get half skeds.
Oh.
Now, yeah, I was more than willing to try and get the sked from the logistics team and then basically cut it in half. I mean, that way we would have had two halves.
That's a big call.
Yeah.
So getting him down off that building, what does it look like? Who do you hand it over to? Because by that point, it's like it's kind of out of our hands.
That's the best bit. That's the best bit. So you've got everybody underdog in the city wanting to touch this casualty, because that just seems to be the thing.
Yep.
If it's fined, you'll get all the city will come, and everybody wants to touch the casualty. So I remember Malcolm Russell saying, nobody, and I'll use polite language, nobody is going to touch this casualty but us. Because his fear was we even get him onto the street, and with the commotion and the panic, he gets dropped on his head.
Yeah. They want to pick him up and they want to carry him through celebration and applause and stuff like that. But
Stevie will tell you he had some pretty strong words with the local, was it paramedic?
Yeah, so we'd put a plan in place about how we were going to go about it. I spoke to Malcolm. I'd went into the building and just had a chat with him. Like, what? He's like, yeah, as soon as the stretcher's here, we'll get him out. And he says, and I want to assess him outside before we move him. Yep, totally. I says, we've got an area set up outside that's basically ready to be a makeshift operating theatre if it's required. Yeah, I don't think we'll need that, but great, that's what we'll do. I says, right, that's fine then. So I briefed all the team. This is what's going to happen. Malcolm and Deb are going to assess the patient once we get them outside. And then the ambulance is up there to the right, down a little slope. It's probably about a 3-minute walk. What we'll do is you guys just get hands on the stretcher when Malcolm says so, and I'll just clear the path for you. If you need to stop and rotate, just give the shout, and that's what we'll do. Right, perfect. Anyone happy with that? Yeah. Anybody got any questions? No? Fine. Right, there we go. So it gets the patient out relatively quickly, actually, once the stretcher arrived, gets them onto this makeshift table, and Malcolm starts doing his thing. And at that point, the ambulance personnel had arrived. So the ambulance, the makeup of the ambulance personnel was a man who didn't speak any English, and then a young Turkish girl who did speak English. It turns out she wasn't in any way medically trained. She was basically just like an admin manager.
Okay.
So as soon as this patient came out, it was like John says, straight away they just wanted to touch him and they just wanted to put their hands on the stretcher, and so did the gentleman. So I'd politely asked her twice to step out the road and let Malcolm and Deb do their assessment of him. And then by the third time came around, I had to raise my voice and get a bit angry with them. While this was all going on, the dog handler was actually filming this because it was obviously a good news story. So yeah, there's a bit of an outburst from myself towards these two people, basically telling them to back off because they'd already been told this isn't happening. I can't trust you because I don't know who you are. I can't trust you to move that patient that distance, but I could trust my own team to do it. So just you get to your ambulance and get your ambulance ready, and we'll be there in a couple of minutes' time.
Yeah.
And once that was done, it was all hands on, and we walked that patient up the road, down the path, and onto the back of the ambulance. It was textbook.
Well done, mate. Again, that level of assertiveness is just required, and some people can just get bowled over by people's energy because this, again, it's all with the best of intentions, but you've got to make clear what the boundaries are, what we're not going to do. Some people are like, oh, it's easy to decide what we're going to do, but what are we not going to do? What's going to be the point we're not allowing?
They did want to help, but they were actually becoming a hindrance. And I think the most frustrating thing for me, Pete, was probably the language barrier at that point, because I'd been saying to my interpreter, can you tell me? Like, yeah, I have. And I was like, yeah, I know you have, because you keep saying the same thing, but they're not listening to you. So, yeah, they're maybe just going to have to listen to my best Turkish now.
People understand hands and volume sometimes. That's just what's required. So big effort by the whole team, getting everybody back, getting that welfare, getting that crew rotation. What did we learn coming back into the boo, having that sort of wider strategic view of what's happening around?
Well, that was actually that rescue started at around about midday. And no, I think you went in it. The tally on the board was around about midday, and it took 4.25 hours.
Whoa!
So that was relatively quick considering what it was. It was a good rescue. It was a good team rescue, Pete. Everyone within the team contributed. Obviously, John was at the coalface for a little bit, but there was other guys and girls at the coalface. I had one of the safety and security officers was actually on scene with us that day as well. Everyone contributed, and at the end of it, we came out. We handed the casualty over, the patient over to the ambulance service. The doors closed, and we headed back to the actual scene. And it was just a case of, right, let's get something to eat, let's get a bottle of water, let's do just one of those quick debriefs. But the morale was sky high.
Yeah,
and it was, Pete, if you could have bottled it at that point, like I'd be a millionaire.
Yeah.
And then that's obviously where John and I got that picture taken that you've seen, and it was proper relief. Once the patient had gone, it was just proper relief just to see my brother again, because I thought, oh, yeah, man. And I did say to him, don't you ever do that to me again.
But like you say, you've still got so many, you don't know how long you're going to be there for, and that adrenaline fatigue, because that all, you've got a long walk back, everybody, you can't just bounce on that. You've got to bring yourself back down, get that R&R, get a hot meal or two, and then be ready to go again.
Well, yeah, it was straight on to the next site. It was like, let's have some food, debrief, right guys, next job. Let's go.
Because it was relatively quiet where we were, it seemed like the best place to have something to eat and have just, it was 10-15 minutes, that's all it was.
Yeah.
And even before the sort of 15 minutes were up, the guys and girls had their bags on their back and they were ready to go again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's absolutely no issue with motivation at all within the UKISAR team. It's so unique.
But we're getting on 5-6 o'clock there. Nightfall is going to be coming in soon, so I know we don't operate too much in the dark if we can avoid it. Yeah,
we basically had I think it was unwritten that 10 o'clock was probably about our limit. I'd have to go and check I kept a journal because I knew that things would get a bit mixed up.
It will, mate, and that's that's what I said to you. Like, try and get in there early because time just fades that reality, and everything starts to blur. So, what was the next 24, 48 hours looking like?
So that evening when we did get back to the boo, the positivity was flying because I think the other teams have had some good grabs as well. They've had some good grabs as well. Jim Chasten's team got a family.
Wow.
And it was like, yeah, good one, Jim. We managed to get this man out who was trapped like that, and you've come back with a family. It's like,
Jim's amazing. Jim and Stacey. I know Stacey didn't get an opportunity to go here, but like, oh my God, the skill set there. And just
So,
the optimism, the command presence, that guy is another one. He's just like,
not that it was a competition, but I did say to my team the next morning,
Up your game.
Can you just up your game a little bit? And I'm not taking anything less than twins today. We're looking for twins.
if we can find 60 puppies and a baby in a
we're
mine
looking for
shaft,
twins.
that'd be
That's
great.
what I'm wanting today. And they got it. So that next day, we went back to an area that we'd previously been at before. But we were going on specific taskings that had came from via command and control. I think it had came via AFAD to the UCC, and then David obviously passed it down to us.
Yeah,
there was a list of I think it's somewhere between sort of 70 and 80 sites that they wanted us to go to. So it was just methodical, Pete. You go to these sites, find out if it's viable. If it's viable, then carry on. If it's not, move on. So yeah, we ended up back on streets that we knew, which was fine. You could move through it quite quickly. You know what buildings have fell. You knew what sort of shortcuts to take. And we ended up stumbling across the locals had found a female alive, burrowed pretty deep. So at that point, I think there was a mixture of both blue teams and some red teams, if I remember rightly. We're all in this one area.
Okay.
So Jim stayed at street level. And managed things down there. I went up onto the pile and just kind of overseen the troops basically handballing and digging like dogs to get to this woman. And unfortunately there was a deceased in the road, so they had to move that out the road and treat that with the dignity that they deserved. They get to this viable live rescue. They managed to get down to her, and then Malcolm and Debs, they started to do their bit, but unfortunately the woman the injuries were just so severe that she was basically at end of life by the time we'd got there. And despite their best efforts in pretty horrible circumstances, to be honest with you, the lady succumbed to her injuries and she was pronounced dead at the scene. So we basically said, right, the ones that don't need to be here, if you could just collect the tools up, get back onto street level, refresh yourself, get some water in you, get some food in you if you want. And at that point, I went and spoke to the interpreter and says, look, the husband, do you want to ask him if he wants to recover the body? No, he wants you guys to recover the body because you guys will make sure she's in one piece. And I thought, right, okay. That's a bit of a tall task given the condition that she was in.
That's the discipline again. You're like, ugh.
But then the 5 or 6 lads that were around her were like, I explained that this is what we need to do. Are you guys all right with that? Yeah, and off they went. And totally task focused. They went at it. And they done a really, really good job to preserve that lady's dignity. And they did get her out in one piece. I then asked the husband if he wanted to put her into the body bag, and he was like, no, could you do that for me as well? So we placed her in the body bag, carried her off the rubble pile, placed her down at the side of the rubble, and he had a look and he just started sobbing again. The rest of the guys had kind of walked off to the tool dump area at that point, and I spoke to the gentleman, and he was basically just overcome with emotion, but he was overcome with thanks for the efforts of the team. And through the interpreter, he said that we had reunited his family when he thought all hope was lost. And it was hard hitting because it's not been a successful conclusion from our perspective, given that when we got there, she was alive and we worked on her. But he was so thankful for the efforts of being able to reunite so that they could then go on with the next stage.
And that is success in ways. You know, you're creating closure, because there's nothing worse than that unknown. You think your loved one is still suffering, they're still in trouble.
Yeah. It was closure for the family, yeah, and he was so thankful, and I thought, this is probably the worst day of your life, and yet you're showering praise and thanks onto us, and I thought that's so humble of them.
Surreal.
Surreal's just about covers it, I think. So I felt the right thing to do was come out on the street, the guys and girls together and just pass that thanks on straight away. Like, it's a massive thing what you guys have just achieved there.
Mm.
Okay, she's unfortunately she's died, but you've been able to reunite family, and give them that closure, like John says, and it's powerful things like that are the other side.
Mm.
You
Also
probably
gives
don't
some
always
closure
see.
to the team. You know, when we talk about trauma,
Yeah,
you're trying to help give context around what you've done, what the outcome has been, and it covers in some of those hollow spots in your trauma, because that is
yeah,
what effectively you're all going through as well, around this is what we tried to do, and actually we did achieve it to an extent, and we can now draw a line under that and try and help
yeah,
our minds move forward.
Because
yeah,
there was the sites that we went to, and we knew there was deceased in there, and we couldn't get to them, and we didn't have the time to get to them, and that leaves a bit of a hole. You know it does. You've been there yourself. You know, for
Yeah.
shouts, and it's so that one that we were at there, Steve was talking about. Yeah, we did get closure from that one. But unfortunately, there's other 50 or whatever that we didn't. So it was a strange one, because in the UK you'd see it to the end and you'd get the casualty out, all alive or dead, but
Yeah.
most of the ones that we were going to, we knew there was somebody in there highly suspected that passed away, and we had to move on, and that was tough,
yeah,
especially when it was children involved. It was kind of hard
Yeah.
hitting, especially your own kids and stuff. And it's like, well, there's kids in there, but well, we got to move on.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we moved on. We moved on from there. It was quite a distance away. The area that we described, we'd obviously been there before a few times, so we knew the lay of the land, and it was starting to get a bit spicy. So we just picked the next GPS coordinate and headed straight for that. It was We looked at it, quite easy to describe on a map. There's the middle roundabout, 4 streets down on the left. That's where we're going. Headed for there, and it seemed like the walk was taking forever. We got to where we were, had a look on the map, and at that point, one of the other blue teams had got another possible viable location, so they went to that. Jim Davison came with us that time. Got to this building. Yeah, they were working on it. Explained to them why we were there. We'll run the dog over. And they were like, yeah, we don't think there's anyone, but there may be someone there. So we put the dog over, kept the rest of the team back, had a bit of a feed. Right, this is where we're going to have our lunch. And then we got some information via the Netherlands and the UCC that there was a confirmed live hit, basically the other end of the sector. So Jim was like, yeah, we're going to go for that. It was at that point that we realised we were actually in the wrong place. We'd went 1 street too far, because we'd been counting the streets, or so we thought, but we'd actually missed the street because of the building sitting over it. A gentleman had came down and approached us. Again, similar to the first gentleman that had approached us a few days earlier, and he said, look, my brother and his friend are missing in that building over there. There was no panic in his voice. There was no real despair, and he was a police officer. So we thought, right, okay. Okay, so I sent a couple of lads over. Could you go and have a look? Yeah, come back and let me know what you think, because we're going to be moving on to this confirmed site. Yeah, okay. So yeah, the lads went away. They came back. Yeah, 10 minutes later or so, they were like, I think we maybe just need to get more bodies just to have a look at this, Steve. I was like, right, okay. We'll give it another sort of 10 minutes, and then we're going to head for that site. Went over to this building, paint a picture. Imagine 3 buildings standing in a row, 7, 8 stories high, and the middle building has just completely pancaked. It's just fell down and forward, and that was where they were last seen, on the 4th floor again, I think, of what that building used to be. So sent 4 lads in through a hotel. Could you go in that door there and just see if you could hear anything? Old school, shout, make a noise, and sent another 2 lads up this pretty precarious alleyway. Guys, if you could go up there, see if you could hear anything. Sent a few guys and girls around the back. Go around the back, same old school shout. And then within a couple of minutes, Scott and Steve came over and said to me, Scott was like, Steve, yeah, we could hear people shouting. I was like, wow.
There it is.
Like, okay, where are they? He's like, I've got no idea. He says,
They're
but
in there.
he says I could hear them shouting up this alleyway, into the collapsed building, up this collapsed stairwell. They're in there someplace, and it was like, oh,
right in the bowels,
goodness.
right in the bowels.
Okay, let's try and formulate a plan then. So it says to Jim, look, we've got someone here. He's like, right, I'll send the other blue team onto that other site. Let's just put a plan in place. So yeah, we tried going around the back. We tried coming in from the right hand side. Tried coming in from the left hand side. And it was basically just the hardest bit, Pete, was actually trying to establish where these two people were located. It was like standing looking at it. It was a guess.
Yeah.
It was an educated guess as to where they could have been. We looked at it. We looked at where the stairwell was. We looked at where the lift shaft was, and the lift motor was basically 10 feet from where we were standing because of the way the building had fell forwards. So yeah, there was put a team. So the left-hand side building that was still relatively untouched. Sent a team in there through the back up the stairs to try and start coming from the back, and then again sent my boy here onto the second floor, and he says, look, I think we could probably tunnel into that. I was like, well, you know what? I'll tell you how many paces. I'll get somebody to go pace that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was as simple as that. 12 paces, put your back to the window, 12 paces, and then John walked these 12 paces and just started smashing into this wall. He smashed into the wall in a few various locations, but where he ended up smashing into was
bang on the money, yeah.
Bang on the money, and that's.
So when we say smashing on it, are we hauled in all of the heavy gear?
There was no finesse about it at all, Pete. They went at it with hammers to breach through one building into another building, which was totally collapsed, and then began tunneling like moles in the direction of where we were telling them the voices were, because at this moment...
So these all dirty breaches just were hand tools?
Yeah.
Wow.
Sledgehammer.
That's hard-ass work.
Red mist.
They just couldn't... The guys that were within the building tunneling at that point, they couldn't hear the patients. They couldn't hear them at all.
Yeah.
All the communication was coming from this really, really dangerous alleyway and collapsed stairwell. But they got to a point after a good few hours that they were able to hear, and then was stopped having to put people into that alleyway, because it was, every time someone walked into that alleyway, I was thinking, no, if we get another rumble here, there's no way out for them.
And there was a few aftershocks when we were there. We had the wasp set up, detecting any movement. It did go off.
Yeah, it went off a couple of times.
So the wasp, for people's understanding, you basically fixation on point on a building, and then if the building moves, it sends off an alarm. Effectively,
it's just a rectangular sort of shaped box, and it works on its parameter. You set the parameters of its tolerance of movement. You fix it to a solid structure, and then if it activates, you run. Effectively,
a couple of times people running.
It was developed by a former UKISAR.
I know, great people again. So, how long into that kind of rescue did we start seeing some progress? And when did we get eyes on?
So, as far as progress went, I think there was a bit of with sectorized. Martin had arrived with his team, and I think he'd realised that it was pretty manic. And he's like, look, I suggest you sectorise it. So, yeah, sectorised it basically like what you would fire service wise, front and back, and then created a separate sector for anyone going into this spicy alleyway. And it was quite quick. I would say within probably an hour or so, I decided that the rear sector, sector 3, wasn't viable.
Yeah.
It was just, one, it was too dangerous, and two, they would have had to do an awful lot of work in a very, very dangerous area for not a lot of gain, because John and where John's team had went in were actually getting on quite well, and they were already at the area and still moving in the same direction. So yeah, we just decided to close that sector down and just everyone focus on this tunnel. Put the crew rotation in place. Initially it was too long, then it was too short because there was people standing outside absolutely chopping at the bit to get in there. And then we eventually struck the right balance. I missed the trick myself, if I'm honest. I probably should have sold tickets, because if I did, I'd be a very, very rich man at the moment.
Really?
For everyone that was desperate to get into that hole.
It's good
Again,
though. That's what we want the people for.
yeah, the bravery and the commitment of the crews, specifically on that rescue, were just something that I'll never be able to put into words. They were in a situation that it was terrifying.
Yeah.
That's the only way to describe it. We're all big and we're all macho. It was terrifying. They were in a tunnel and they were on their bellies and they were burrowing things back. And there was 4 of them in a tunnel at once. They were basically just handballing it all the way back. And with every item that they moved, they were getting deeper in. And it was the 4-person crews worked like dogs. And once they started hearing voices, they got quicker.
Yeah.
And once they started getting the voices closer, they got even quicker. And they got even deeper into this tunnel. And it just got, from their point of view, they were loving it. And I'm standing thinking, please don't shake. Please don't shake. Please don't shake. Please don't shake. And we're already putting a relief crew policy that the relief crews, so the 2 crews that had went back to the boo, were going to come out at midnight. They were going to come out and they were going to take over at midnight. And our guys were properly pushing to get hands onto this first patient, this female patient.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they didn't get to her. The relief crews came out. They done 2 20-minute rotations and had hands on her. It was basically the textbook rescue. If there's ever such a rescue, it was textbook. One team went in, worked for a good 8 or 9 hours plus. In fact, it would have been longer than that. Probably near 12.
10 to 12 hours.
Probably,
right?
Yeah, probably near 12
And
hours.
we got that one at 2 o'clock, and
They worked,
leave at 12 to 10
they
hours.
worked and worked and worked and worked. And then a fresh team came in, 2 rotations, and got their hands on the casualty. Totally fresh, ready to remove this first casualty.
Perfect.
And they worked for a few more hours and then got the second casualty and got them out. It was
because the longer you're in there as well, your risk tolerance tends to grow. Just naturally, you become a little bit more lax, not because you don't care, not because you're a bad operator, just because you get used to your environment. And
totally.
It's
totally
so hard.
It was from my point of view, every single member of the UKISAR team were involved in that rescue, which, you know yourself, doesn't happen all that often.
No.
For everyone to have been involved in that, although the 2 teams that were with me on the ground at the time, although we didn't physically rescue the casualty, we did put all the groundwork in.
It would have happened exactly the same the other way around.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. You can't. The last team doesn't get the last meter unless you do the first 10.
Yeah,
that's just the way it works.
And quite early into it, I'd said, I don't care who gets hands on this casualty, as long as it's someone in orange. As long as someone in orange gets to this casualty, I'm not bothered. And that was the way it worked out. We went back to camp. I think it was about 2 o'clock by the time we got back into the camp, maybe. A few of us went in the shower, a few of us went mess tent, and I think I eventually went to my bed just after 3. I was heading towards my tent just after 3, and one of the guys came into the command tent and said, Steve, they've got her. And it was just instant relief, mate. It was the best feeling I've had.
Oh, mate.
Other than seeing John come out that hole. There was relief on so many fronts, because the plans that we'd put in place and the work rate that they'd put in to know that there'd been a successful rescue was just brilliant. It was incredible. That feeling was just unbelievable.
So there's so much activity going on across the whole site here. How do you manage to get them a couple of hours of downtime?
Did they? Right, so no, I can't remember that.
That's what I'm saying. But that rest and recuperation is so hard to get, and it's important, even though you don't feel like you don't want it. Your best self is one that's had a little bit, an hour, half an hour.
Everyone has their own little thing. So, like when I came back, I couldn't go into my little house, my little tent, dirty. Knowing that I was dirty, sweaty from having all the dust and everything else. So, shower. go for the shower, regardless what time of day it is. Go for the shower, and Pete, hey, no one could really say no to a brew. So yeah, you either go grab a coffee or grab a cup of tea, and then
we had a giggle together that night as well.
We did have a giggle. There's a difference. There's another story that goes on with that. But about an hour before we were due to be relieved, there was a near-death experience. That's the only way I could describe it. At the time, we if you ask anyone that was there, they'll all agree that we thought our number was up. It was terrifying. It was exciting. It was adrenaline filled. It was, looking back, it was hilarious. It was
certain calmness about it as well, because we kind of came to terms with this is how it's going to go. Which is it's a very unusual thing. I've never felt like that before.
No, I've never felt like that before. But if that's how it feels before it actually happens, and I've not really got a fear about it now.
Okay.
So the background was, an hour before we were due to be relieved, I kind of had a look and thought, right, we've got another couple of rotations left here. I want to go in and just see how the troops are getting on. So I nipped inside. At that point, I was fulfilling one of the ops commander role. Jim Davison was the OIC, and Martin was acting as our support. So I went in just to have a look, see how we're getting on. A couple of flights up in this building. The lads were in tunneling, and it was the lads from London were in the tunnel at the time.
Okay.
There was three from London, and Colin Callum from Links was in the tunnel. So we were there, and I just was conscious of shouting and screaming outside, and I thought, well, that's a bit strange. What's going on there? So I left, sort of run down the stairs. As I got out the building, Jim was standing on the pavement, and I was like, "What's going on?" He says, "Steve, I've got no idea what's going on." But all the locals were running. They were driving down the street. They were on the back of pickup trucks, and they were screaming. They were terrified. The dust that was being kicked up was incredible. And then as you looked up the street, the police were doing exactly the same. They were going in the same direction. The sirens were going. The ones that weren't in cars were running. There was genuine fear and terror in their faces. Jeez. And it was like, what's going on here? And then you look further up the street, and the military are running. They're in their vehicles. The ones that weren't in vehicles are running and screaming as they go down the street. And I'm at this point thinking, who's chasing who here? Yeah. And then who did the military run from? So my instincts were telling me that terrorism, is someone shooting them? I don't know. The interpreter was trying his best to try and figure out what was going on, but just the sheer panic in everyone, he couldn't get anything. And then all of a sudden he shouted, the dam has burst, the water is coming.
Fucking hell.
Was one word or phrase that was used. And at that point, people started like the silent blowing of whistles.
Yeah. Jesus.
So the guys obviously in the tunnel, they panicked because they didn't know what was going on. They got out the tunnel. Everyone that was in sort of our holding area just grabbed bags and started running. People were running back up the hill to try and grab bags, and everyone just started sprinting, following all the locals. Jim Davidson screamed, a bit of calmness, get to the high ground. He was like
an old army
general from like the 1800s. Get
there
to
it
the
is.
high ground. UKISAR, get to the high ground. So everyone just tears off down the street, Pete. But there's a funny part of the story. So Big Mark Smith, obviously a good friend of ours.
Yeah,
he'd been struggling with his back and his hip. But Pete, he would have run a sub 2-hour marathon that night. He grabbed 3 bags in each hand, and he was sprinting down the street.
Oh, yeah, he's a bloody ox, isn't he? Strong as a beast. I remember seeing him wield a sledgehammer in Kosovo. Is something to be seen.
I waited basically outside the building, waiting on everybody passing me. Once they passed me, it was like, right, I waited on you, now I'm going. So off I went, sprinting down the street. And for some reason, I think it was Jim Davison pointed, get to the high ground over there. And it looked like the mayor's house, townhouse
yeah.
or a town building. And it had quite a large sort of front garden area. The steps were sort of big marble type steps to get up into the property itself. Big Mark Smith's taking these steps 3 at a time. Still got his 3 bags. Whole of UKISAR are piling into this building, which is relatively untouched. It's perched on a bit of a mound. It's a 2-story building. Everyone's piling in there. They're then sprinting up the staircase. We're ushering people up the staircase. And we're on the 2nd floor, and people are like, it's a flat roof. We need to get to the roof. Need to get to the roof. Of course, all the doors are closed. You've just piled 30 fireys into a room where doors are shut. So these big 14-foot mahogany doors are then getting kicked straight off the hinges. People looking for loft hatches. And there's a panic. There is a proper panic. God bless him, Sean Crone from West Mids. He was my command support officer. He managed to grab the makeshift tally board. The tallies had been falling off all night, like constant falling on the floor. Sean picked up this makeshift tally board. He sprinted with everyone else, took the stairs as everyone else did. He never dropped a single tally.
Good.
So we were able to go through an accountability process to make sure we had everyone. Unfortunately, we didn't, because other people had decided to go for higher ground than what we did. We basically went for a 2-story building. They went for some of the bigger ones that were about. And it was just a case of wait. It was like you're looking out the front window of this thinking, right, if the water's going to come, it's coming there. Is it going to get us? Is it not going to get us? Everyone goes through their own thought process at that point. I managed to check in with 2 of my 3 guys from Scotland. The 4th one was 2 out of 4, sorry, 3 out of 4. The 4th one wasn't there. He'd went to another building, and I was like, what's going on here? And then it was just calmness, and it was quiet. There was didn't seem to be a panic from anyone in that room. It was just a togetherness, and the thought that, right, well, if this is happening, well, it's happening, we're all together. Jim was still outside, basically at the top of the staircase, just trying to usher more and more people in. And what seemed like an eternity, but it was probably only 5 minutes maybe from that first shout. It came through that it was actually a gas explosion.
Right.
Yeah, of course, as I was sprinting down the road, I was cursing Big Phil Irvin for everything, because I thought, that bastard, he never mentioned anything about a dam. Nothing about a dam at all. Turns out the nearest dam peak was like 150 kilometres away. It was a fabricated story that it came. I don't know where it came from, but the aim of the story was to get international rescue teams out of the city for whatever reason, whether it was to take our equipment or whatnot.
Really?
However, it worked because everyone had the fear of God in them. As soon as it was like, no, it's a gas explosion. It was a sprint back up the hill, because 4 guys were like, well, I'm not missing my turn to get in the hole, and off they went. Off they went back into this building again. It was just so surreal. But we all had a hug, we all had a laugh, and the silent laughter when we got back to the boo that night between those 2 teams was just, it was something to behold. It was just, you knew the people that were there, you looked at them and you just laughed, uncontrollable laughter, because you both knew what each other was thinking.
Yeah.
While all that was going on, the relief teams were sat on the coach on the bridge. So they knew what was coming as well. The dam had burst, and they were stuck in traffic on the bridge, on the coach, couldn't get off it.
Jesus. Yeah.
So they've got a different version of the story to tell as well.
Bloody hell. That's just surreal.
Oh,
something like that, especially amongst all the feelings and emotions and adrenaline and lack of sleep and Jesus Christ, just running on fumes by that point.
It was a reset. It was a once we got back to the work site, I felt untouchable at that point, because I thought, right, if the dam's not got us, what else is there?
So talk to us around the rest of the deployment. I mean, I know there's a million directions we could go in, but you ultimately all came home safe. There was a whole host of rescue got carried out by a myriad of teams. Just take us back for a second. Give us a bit of background on how long you've both been in the service, and then we'll talk a little bit about the training that's took you here.
Okay, so I joined the actual fire and rescue service back in '06 and went straight to a UKISAR station, and I've been there ever since. Joined UKISAR in 2016.
Really? I thought you were in there before that.
No, 2016. I joined.
Why?
Why did I join? I've always had that, as weird as it sounds, burning passion for USAR. It's just something that I like. I like the thought of breaking up bits of concrete. I like the thought of going in tunnels. I like the thought of shoring, which is obviously something that I'm lucky enough to sort of specialise in, if you like. It's a passion, and if you've not got a
We do
passion,
need to do an entire second episode about shoring, by the way, but we'll do that another time because that's fascinating. But sorry, go on.
yeah, and it's a passion, and if you've got a passion for something, then you're going to follow it.
Yeah.
So this seemed like the natural progression. I was a firey, I was a driver, and at the time I didn't want to go for promotion, and it seemed like something else that would be a challenge for me, and it seemed like the right challenge at the time.
I think you've played it well because you've got those natural leadership instincts, but now you've got a colossal amount of authenticity behind you as well. You're very valuable to a lot of the new people coming into the services, I think.
Yeah, well, everyone brings their own strengths and their weaknesses to a team as well. It may be a weakness for you, but it may be something that someone could bring out in you to make that weakness better. But it can also be something that you could identify yourself as being a weakness, that you could look at someone and go, actually, I'm going to do what they're doing because they're actually really good at that. I'm going to go tap into that. I'm going to go and speak to them, or I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to watch them. Examples that I could probably use, I could identify my own weaknesses, and best will in the world, we're all humans. If you're not good at something, you steer away from it. Yeah. I didn't see myself as being a manager or a leader. So I sat back and I looked at ones that I did respect. And I thought, you know what, I really like your style. I like the way you go about things. Some I asked questions of, some I just sat back and watched. My first experience of an ISAR within the leader environment was Dave O'Neill. He was my first ops commander back on an exercise in 2016. And I thought, I actually like your style. I like the way you go about this. I could probably learn bits and pieces from you. And I didn't engage him in much conversation. I just sat back and watched them. That was how I found a way of improving my weakness there. And I
Leadership's an art. I always say to people, it's not a template. Do you know what I mean? It's like a cocktail. You've got to pour a little bit of everyone else and then lean into some of your own natural characteristics, your own natural traits, because they'll be strong aspects.
Like with all artwork, you're not going to pick up a pen and a pencil and be the best drawer in the world. It takes practice, and I think being a leader does take practice as well. John and I were actually, before we came on tonight, we were having a chat about it, and I've got a style. It's an amalgamation of all our leadership styles, if you like. But I've got a way that I think, you know what, I'm going to go with humour, a little bit of sarky humour most of the time. But the minute my tone changes, you know what I'm required to do. It might be for some people, it might not be for others. Some people might love it, and some people might not. But it's my style, and it's unique to me.
But you also adapt it to the individuals as well, don't you? That's what's so important, because you know how people respond. Like I'm a plug and play. Just point me in the right direction and just fucking shout at me, and I'll do that. But you've got to have that flexibility. I always say, treat everybody fairly, but don't treat them the same, because they're all very different individuals. Some will respond well to different level of praise, and some need that discipline. I always look at the dogs like as an example of it. Like dogs perform really well if you give them a rigid structure and you're really disciplined with them. And certain individuals are the same. Certain people like John, they've got a real high level of skill set and technical ability and a good level of self-awareness that you can loosen the reins because they've got such strong foundations in their own self-discipline. Do you know what I mean? And it's adapting that for each individual.
Same as anything. I mean, I lecture for a living. I'm an instructor, and you've got to know your audience.
Yeah.
And how I conduct myself under certain circumstances is different from the next day, depending on who I'm teaching. If I'm teaching ISAR guys, I'll throw in lots of funnies, I'll be using expletives, I'll be, winding them up. Then if I get a bunch of new recruits, totally different kettle of fish. Totally
different. Draw the lines a little bit clearer, just because they need that.
Yeah.
What about yourself, John? Because you joined in the 50s, right?
50s, 58. You could get. It was 2003.
I know.
I joined 2003. So
You just crammed so much into that short period of time. That's why I always think
over 20 years. Yeah, just over 20 years.
Yeah.
I had black hair back then. Always wanted to be an ISAR. I was at a station called Alton's Fire Station up in Aberdeen, and there was one of the guys, Neil Finlay, was on my watch, and he was in the original UKISAR team.
Yeah, UKISAR.
Way back when ISAR very first started, and he would sort of regale me of stories of going into foreign places and doing crazy shit. And I thought, I just want to be just like that. And I used to go walking with Neil quite a lot. We used to go up the hills and do a bit of climbing and stuff. I tried to get in the early days, but it was just, I was too inexperienced. It wasn't for me back then. And then I tried for the team again in 2010, 11, and I got into the team back then, and never really looked back, taking full advantage of overseas, courses, being previous deployment. I just love it, and the amount of training that you get to bolster what you've already got as a firefighter is just, people don't quite get it in service.
Yeah,
they don't really understand the levels of skill set that we can acquire through ISAR. Be that the chainsaw, the medical side of things. As far as the medical one goes, okay, we've done all our courses, but getting to work next to the likes of Malcolm Russell in the field, just absolute geniuses in the field, and you're working along with them as one of their guys. It's just unbelievable, and you take that back to service.
It's like descending into Aladdin's cave when you spend time having a conversation with somebody like that. You come back with so many gems and so many nuggets. You're like, bloody hell, you know what I mean? Where that crops up then in your own life and in your own incidents, and when you're back on the normal day to day, but you've got these incredible gems just tucked away in your mind from those experiences.
To me, being a kind of in the trauma side, because I always kind of focused on the trauma side, loved it as a fiery, teach it as an instructor. And then to actually be with the likes of that and Debs, working in the tunnel with these absolute medical ninjas. Yeah. It's just like Stevie said it earlier on. What were you saying? It's like to be picked to play football for, one of the best sides in the world. Just lunchtime, fancy coming putting a pair of football boots on, and it's coming and scoring a goal, scoring a hat trick. That's how I felt,
Yeah.
Ronaldo and Messi have invited you for a game at 2-touch at lunchtime.
That's it.
And that's if you're trying to explain it to someone that's not involved or hasn't been involved, everyone basically understands the concept of football. Most people know who Ronaldo and Messi are. That's Malcolm Russell is the Ronaldo and Messi of that pre-hospital trauma medicine.
It's like when you go, let's dig down into some of our layers of knowledge, and you get to layer 5, and they keep reaching. They're going down to layer 74, and you're like, fucking hell, what's this?
I'm just recording all this in my brain as it's going on. It's like,
it's just smile and nod at that point, isn't it? It's
just
and
I
2 ears, 1 mouth.
A smile on my face, and it's like, that was just brilliant. And I've worked with.
He never delivers it with ego though, and he's never disappointed. Same with Deb, never disappointed that you don't know what they're talking about or something like that. They've got such, and this is what I worry about, because like if people are, they're going to retire eventually, and I'm like, Jesus, this is where we need the Steves and the Johns to drink in as much of that as possible, because they're going to need to disseminate it again.
And you need to pass that on as well. It's like, what I got left, 8-9 years left maybe.
That's why I need to get people like Malcolm on it. Do you know what I mean? I'm just like, we need to bottle that so that next generations can hear it and listen and learn.
Pass it down the line. That's what we're talking about before. Getting new faces in. A lot of good guys, girls have retired. It's time to, the new ones need to come in. The new ones need to be part of the structure. The new ones need to deploy. Yeah. So it's so important to pass on that knowledge.
Steve, we took a break a second ago, but we were just talking about that mental and physical fitness. So you did some hard ass work out there. How much did you really see the difference? And we're not like, there's no difference in teams, we're not pointing out individuals, but like you guys and girls, how valuable do you think some of that additional training and some of that background and some of that self-awareness in those physical and mental disciplines had been valuable to you?
Yeah, both disciplines are equally as important. You've got to have that physical foundation, and then you've got to be able to have that mental capacity to push yourself that little bit further. Now, I've got an acre of pain here. Right, that's fine. You've got an acre of pain, but you've got to block that ache and pain out, because we've all got aches and pains. We're carrying fairly decent weights on our back and bags that probably aren't the greatest. They're not designed for that. You're walking in rubble boots over horrendous walking surfaces as well. You've got to be able to put that stuff to the side. And then you've also got to be honest with yourself before you even get on that plane and say, you know what, can I do this? Have I got a niggle? Have I maybe got a long-term injury? Or are you just doing it to say, you know what, I went to Turkey, or I went to Haiti, or
am I taking 17
Nepal,
different medications, and am I really up to what is going to be asked of my body?
Yeah, and it's an important part of the role. We were all there when we've done the crew leaders course, and our national coordinator now, he has a real concern that we've been together as a team for 30 years and we have not had a serious injury within training or deployment. And one of his concerns is your luck's going to have to run out at some point.
Yeah.
So is it going to be down to physical fitness? We all know, people are having heart attacks and cardiac arrests more and more now, especially within our line of employment. So if we're
but also just the strain it takes on a firefighter, the musculoskeletal injuries and debilitating health conditions, and just the
probably
state of
the biggest cause of sick days within the fire service is probably musculoskeletal. I would say, without being an expert on it. We have to look after ourselves, and
those two are the big costings.
We have to have that physical fitness, but we also have to have that mental capacity to be able to just push that a little bit further as well. But also have that, like I said, the honesty to go, you know what? No, not for me this time. Not for me this time. One of the lads up in Scotland, he was on the list, phoned him, and he says, no, I can't this time. And I thought he was mad. But he explained his reasons just the other day, and it makes perfect sense, because he didn't want to be a hindrance to the team because of what was going on back home. And he was like, no, not for me this time. And and fair play to them, because there was maybe some others that should have said the same.
Yeah.
Because you were in that room as well. There was a lot of folk there that were standing as reserves, chopping at the bit to throw their bags on that plane.
Oh, yeah. Some incredibly proficient. But like you say, when we are going so long without any injuries, and we never wish that upon anybody, but it's a little bit like when we're drilling, you can reduce your risk by raising your level of proficiency and what's within your control. Now, you can't control all the courses that you get to go on, but you can control your self-disciplines, you can control your level of fitness, you can be, looking up on the materials that you've got, you can be attending the Orange Wednesdays, you can be doing that personal and professional development so that when the call does come, you are mentally, physically ready to go.
Yeah. The physical side of it's massive. And I think, obviously, John and I have been responsible for pushing our coordinator's wishes.
Get it nationally. Come on. Change it. Push it. Let's bring it up on the next conversation.
I think the team have thought, here they come the henchmen, to an extent.
The enforcers.
Or the enforcers, whatever way you want to look at it. But it's so important. And having now been away to Turkey and seen how physically demanding it was, there's absolutely no excuse. There's no excuse. We should be pushing it. If you're that little bit more physically prepared, it's only going to be a good thing.
It's not for yourself, tough one,
because it almost feels like a personal attack for certain individuals. We're not going to wander on this for too long, but like the professional stuff, people we rest on that. We rest on our experience. We rest on our technical skill set. But those other bits are real lifestyle choices. But it is, for people that want to be operating at the tip of the sword, you've got to expect more from yourself than you will from anybody else.
It's not just for me. It's for the boy sitting next to me.
I always say that, mate. I'm always like, could you rescue? And I always think this of my family. Like, if we're at the beach, I'm like, could you, if I got in trouble when I'm out there, could you grab me and swim back with me? You know what I mean? If your family got into trouble, could you pull them out of the house if you had to? Could you climb over that wall if you had to? Do you know what I mean? And those are just the simple things you've got to be able to ask yourself and go, actually, is that a reasonable expectation from a first responder? Yes, it is. Can I do it? No.
Yeah.
Okay,
It
so
makes
then
us sound like machines, and that's not what we are. It's just taking that a little bit of more personal responsibility and, like you said, the personal admin and the personal development side of it.
So talk to me about winding down, talk to me about coming back, talk to me about the difficulty of leaving when we know there's so much more work to be done.
Still winding, I think. Still winding.
I think we're still winding. We've obviously been back now 10 days-ish, I think. Probably go down the mental health route to start off with. We were putting in trim procedures and mental health and wellbeing procedures while we were still there. As a crew leader, that was one of my priorities, was making sure that my team were on top of the ball mentally as well.
Nationally, we've gotten so much better at that.
Oh, a lot better.
Yeah, as a Scottish team, all the sector medics within the team and the crew leaders have all done the mental health and wellbeing champion courses. So it's another stink of a bow, not just to be able to look after your team physically, but also try and look after them and signpost them mentally as well.
For me as a medic, I treat the mind as part of the body. You know, and when I teach in trauma care, people say mental health. It's health.
It's all health.
It's
body doesn't exist without the brain. The brain doesn't exist without the body.
Your brain is an organ. It's part of the body. It's all to do. Your A to E. I always say A to E and L at the bottom, and the L's for love. Show and compassion. It's to do with the head. So yeah, it's all one for me.
The body secretes all those chemicals, and the body reacts to it. Sorry, the mind secretes all those chemicals, and the body reacts to it. So you can't deal with them in separation.
Yeah.
So yeah, when we came back, we were given a medical in service. The minute we arrived back into Aberdeen, we were given a medical. We were given a quick sort of mental health check. Nothing.
Did you get that rash looked at, Steve?
What one?
Is that the one you made me put cream on?
The one you keep sending me pictures of.
Yeah, the rash that you've got to put the cream on with your tongue. Yeah, but we're giving a quick. Our health and wellbeing department came up and done that for us. Our coordinator and our teammates had been kind enough to move our vehicles back home, so we were given a lift home as well. We were offered the chance to go for something to eat as a team with the coordinator and the team manager as well, and our families were actually really, really well looked after by the service while we were away.
I'm going to say, give them an understanding of how that welfare looks, because we do appoint welfare officers as well.
Yeah, so every service does something different. I can't speak for any other services in the country, but I can only speak for my own and what we experienced. So my partner, she knew I'd done search and rescue, but I don't think she fully understood what it quite entailed. So when I made that phone call that first morning, I'm going to be at Aberdeen. She's like, I know you're going to Aberdeen because you're going to a course. I was like, well, no, I'm actually heading to the airport because I'm probably going to be at Turkey. And it was like, oh my God. And it was the shock factor. Once we went through our own checks at Aberdeen and headed off, the gaffer said, right, phone numbers on the bit of paper of who you're wanting me to contact. I'm going to facilitate video calls for them for the first couple of nights, and then I'm going to message all your loved ones just to give them a little update on how you're getting on. And yeah, that was what they done while we were away. They were in constant contact, and I think after that first video call that night, my other half was more at ease with it all.
So she kept ringing me as well, but I think that was for something different. Doesn't matter. Yeah, I'll talk to you later.
Because I wasn't replying. And then she found out you were a subby, so she was like,
"Oh yeah, well."
No, so part of that rehabilitation's knowing that you've not got any of that to come home to, any of that worry or strife, because it was looked after while you were away. And while we were away, it was Valentine's Day, and one of the team got cards and chocolates and got them to their partners.
Oh, such a good egg.
Yeah, it doesn't
small
seem
things that
like
make
much.
a massive difference. And this is what people forget:
like
it's that firefighter family, it's that ISAR family.
Right,
it extends further than the team.
It doesn't seem like much, Pete, but it's small things like that make it easier for the families, and it also makes it easier for us in a way, because we don't really have to think too much about it then.
Yeah.
So then, we come home. We've went through all that. We went through the media day. We had a media day that was provided for us, and just speaking to local news and giving them a chat on our thoughts and feelings and experiences. And then we've looked after pretty well in terms of time off. So we were all given pretty much effectively a week off.
Important.
And it was our discussion. Actually, the service says, look, it's up to you guys how long you think you need off. Obviously within certain parameters, as in you're not getting to go back in May. But
John asked for 9 months.
asked for 9. He asked for 9, got 6. So we've been looked after, and then we've actually been lucky enough to be not back to work, but we had ISAR training on Friday, and it
was good actually to get back together.
As fate would have it, it was a mental health day. We were the company that provide the mental health support to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service were actually already planned to come in and facilitate a training day that day anyway. The training day took a little bit of a different spin. It was basically a day of myself and John talking through our experiences with a few other members of the team while these two ladies from the support service were there. And from my point of view, it was really, really good Friday, because we went through that process for about a 7-day period. The brain was trying to process, and it was good to just sit down there with guys that know what ISAR's about, know what we would have experienced, and they just sat and they listened and they chipped in, and we had a laugh, and it was good. Personally speaking, I'm okay. I'm all right. I've had some pretty weird dreams, and I mean like weird dreams where I've been back in Turkey. I've been on the rubble pile. I've been in places that are not Turkey, but people that were in Turkey are in that dream. I've been on jet skis made out of kitchen chairs. But I was told on Friday, that's all part of the process. Your brain's
that's perfectly normal.
A lot of information. I've contacted all of my blue team, and I'm not the only one having these dreams. 3 or 4 of us are having all these really weird, vivid dreams. So that's again, it's reassuring.
Supposed to have an abnormal reaction to an abnormal set of circumstances. If you've got no reaction, then that's where we worry. This is perfectly natural. It's all part of that recalibration.
Not embarrassed to say it, but for the first couple of days, I kind of wish I was back there. Because you went from operating in an environment at literally 100 miles an hour to coming back and being told you're doing nothing. And that's not normal for me either.
No. Well, I have said to you before, Steve, you are supposed to do some work at work. You know, can't just keep taking time off for ISAR. You do need to do some work.
You sound like my 2 previous watches.
What you got planned for the next few months? Well, I'm planning all the ISAR training I'm going to go on. Well, I'd like you to do some references as well if you get a second.
Could you actually come to the fire station and ongoing?
Maybe one.
Is there
once a month? Maybe
any chance of doing that? So that's it. Luckily enough, I've caught up with John as well, which is good, because
shared our dreams.
We've talked about our weird dreams together, not together. The dreams don't involve us together, but the shared dreams. But it's been good to certainly catch up with John as well, because I got to experience an experience of a lifetime, and I got to do it with one of my best mates. So you can't really grumble too much about that.
How you living, John?
Good, really good actually. Yeah. You know what it's like every time I speak to Stevie on the phone, pick up the phone or catch up with him, it's like we've just gone through a really similar situation in close quarters, and it's weird. We've got the mental dreams together. I've been doing the same stuff. It's been the dreaming. I think first night back I was sleepwalking, and it's just. But I remember from being out in Nepal, it was exactly the same. I came back, I did the sleepwalking thing, I did the dream thing. It was like, fucking hell. It's funny talking to Steve. It's just the similarities are crazy that we're kind of going through. But do you know what? And I think Steve as well. I feel really positive about what we've done. Mental health wise, I feel really good.
But so much better. It's a safer place. It's a safer process. It's a healthy journey for people to go through now. It's less jarring.
I think the way that we're set up now in the service, I think, through the UK, everybody's got the awareness of, the damage that can be done, the hidden scars that you can gather with being on deployment and just normal firefighting tasks. I've gone through very difficult times in the past, but for this one, I feel so positive coming out of it. We did such a good job as a team. There wasn't one person that I wouldn't have not liked to have been there with. I think everything that we did within amongst our team, I've got no regrets, not one single regret of where we've been.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
I think we couldn't probably physically or mentally have done more than we did. We pushed ourselves to the absolute limits.
Yeah, we were having more decompression time at Stansted at the hotel, and it was only a couple of hours, and we sat down around the table, myself and John and the two other lads from Scotland, and then one of the lads from London. And I just said to him, you know what, I'm quite at peace with the decisions I made out there. Could have done that different, could have done that different. And John was like, I don't think so. And I'm like, well, I maybe could have, but there's nothing I could change. I can only make a decision based on the information you have at that time. If I had the hindsight, then it would have been completely different. But
hey man, 77 went out there happy and healthy. 77 came back.
Yeah, from my point
you
of view,
rescued some people while you were there. You created some calm out of chaos. You rescued some lives.
Yeah, from my point of view, I was given a specific role. That specific role was to look after these guys and girls and make sure that they all got back in one piece. If we never rescued anyone and they all came back in one piece, I've still done my job. But to play the part in a wider team that rescued or had a hand in 11 rescues, 8 live and then 3 further finds with a dog, and everyone returns back safe and sound, that's like, yeah, fine, job done there.
Mate, I'm so incredibly proud of both of you. I would just if I was with you, I would break every rule of personal space possible. Kissing and hugging and inappropriate hand movements or would be aplenty. There would be fizzers going all over the place. Just look at you both men. But I'm just so proud of you. I feel like I'm two sides of a coin. As much as I'm frustrated and angry and wish I'd have been there, I'm just so immensely proud to even be remotely connected.
I think we're so mindful of that as well, because there, not just yourself, but there's a lot of good team players that would have made a huge difference out there, and and we've got to remember that the disappointment that you guys have got now. You didn't get to do that. So that must be difficult to handle. Yeah,
but we're all still part of the process. And I think this one, I think about Deb, and I think about the rest of the team. That it's a big machine. And I think about our chiefs, and I think about the people in our teams. I think about the people on our techie stations who have helped us keep those skill sets sharp. They are all different steps, different layers, different cogs that have kept us there.
I just hope for the ones that didn't go out, they don't lose heart. Because there's a lot of really, especially the younger ones that are maybe not been in that long. That, I just hope that they stick with it. Because they've got a long time in the career. They will get that shout. It will come back in again.
Of course it will, mate. For the better or worse, the world is in a very challenging pace, and we've got a lot of complex, wicked problems to try and solve. And there'll be lots of climactic and environmental challenges that will crop up. So their day will come. Our day will come.
100%. 100%.
Thank you so much for your time tonight, fellas. We've gone for 2.5 hours. It's crazy how much that time passes. I love you both so much. John, I need to get you back on, talk about training, development, that mentoring mindset. And we need to do a whole episode on shoring and how to deal with those nasty rashes, Steve. So we'll get those conversations in soon. Please send so much of my love to your boy, to your family, to the service, to your watches, to the rest of the ISAR boys and girls. I love you so much. I'm really thankful for everything you've done.
Cheers, Pete.
Thanks for us.
Thank you, Pete.
Thanks for having us, Pete. It's always a pleasure.
Firefighters podcast is put together to develop, inspire, and hopefully even motivate those individuals who have chosen to serve our communities and be part of the first responder family. It's brought to you by myself, operational firefighter Pete Wakefield. If you have enjoyed today's episode and you want to see the podcast continue, please head over to our Patreon page where you can support the ongoing efforts of the podcast. Please hit that follow, subscribe, or rate button on whatever platform you're listening to. Please support your emergency services responders, and thank you for listening.